it this time. I go for mine. I get to shine. Now throw your hands up in the sky. Go for mine. I get to shine. Now throw your hands up in the sky.
My first guest is a dear friend of mine, somebody who I met back in 1985 when we both went to high school in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, New York at Severian High School. He is a great friend of mine, and I'm thrilled to have him as the inaugural guest on This Week in Startups. He's one of the most intelligent, dynamic, and funny individuals, and I consider him one of my best friends. He has had an epic career building content management systems starting in 1995 for Business Week, and then moving on to being art director of Cyber Surfer magazine, which was the first magazine I was editor of. He came and was the CTO and the stand-in art director for Silicon Alley Reporter, a little known fact, and then at a game, a New York Knicks game in 2003, when Patrick Ewing's jersey was retired, I lobbied Brian to start a company with me that would be a network of blogs. And Brian had a couple of great ideas on how to do that, and we formed a partnership in the fall of 2003 called Weblogs Inc., which produced Engadget, Autoblog, Joystick, and many other things. He's been my partner and my lifelong friend. So please join me in welcoming Brian Alvey, the CEO of CrowdFusion, to the show.
Thank you very much.
There he is.
Psyched to be here. First
Guest.
First.
Despite how weird he looks, what's the biggest risk you've ever taken? What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
Weblogs Inc.
Weblogs Inc.
Taking out a second mortgage on my house, being a couple $100,000 in debt, and yeah, that was the biggest one. I was married. We had my first son Jack in 2003. So right after we did Meet the Makers and right after a lot of the Venture Reporter stuff, and then we started in 2004. I built out like 2 client websites that summer.
Kansas City Chiefs, yeah.
The Kansas City Chiefs and Capgemini. I had to split a lot of money with a lot of people, and and couldn't really finish them, and brought in somebody to like sub for me. And so just didn't make a lot of money doing that. And we were doing this startup thing. It took us a while to make money on that.
Yeah.
You know. So that was it. It was those times.
People don't realize this, but I mean, in terms of risk taking, I had a little bit of money in the bank, and I had a severance contract from a previous gig.
Yep.
So the first year of Weblogs Inc., I was okay.
Yeah,
and I had no family. I'm living in a dirty loft on the west side of Manhattan. It's no big sweat for me. My loft costs $1,800 a month.
And I've got a house.
You've got a house,
and
a wife,
and a baby,
probably more babies coming at some point. And you took a second mortgage on your house in order to do Weblogs Inc. That's real entrepreneurship. For those people watching at home, the people who are like, I can't do something because I don't have money, you're a bunch of crybabies. Nobody needs to give you permission to be an entrepreneur. You go do it, you take it, you put the expenses on your credit card, you be like Brian Alvey, take a second mortgage. That's real entrepreneurship. If you're sitting there waiting and crying like a baby, like, oh my God, a VC's got to give me money or I can't do this, that's nonsense, okay? None of the businesses I've created, including Brian, do we have funding in the early days? We just did it and we built off revenues. I think there's a lot of people with a sense of entitlement, like, oh my God, you can just raise venture capital. It's like it's some God-given right. By the way, first couple of companies we did, there was on Quantcast, 36 million uniques, 10 million more than Dig, double what Twitter is. Please welcome to the program, Seth Sternberg, CEO and co-founder of Meebo.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm so glad that you're the second guest.
That's when it's all Elaine and Sandy.
So at what point do you guys go, you know what? Time to leave the other jobs, time to quit school?
Yeah, for us, for Elaine and Sandy, it was, hey, we're about to launch. We love the product. Like, we'd worked on 2 products previously that we never even launched because we just weren't passionate about them. We didn't think we hit it. And so we killed the products pre-launch. But with Meebo, as we were writing it and using it, we loved the product, we loved using it, and so it made everybody very passionate about it.
Right.
I had a little more flexibility because I was in school. So my point when I decided to drop out, a couple things happened. Probably the biggest one is I got an email in the middle of finance class, and it was Elaine and Sandy, and they're like, our servers are about to crash, you gotta order new servers, like, right now. And so I'm like in the back of class emailing the server guys.
Yeah.
As we did outsource servers, I'm like, I need more servers right now. And then the finance professor saw me doing that, and of course called on me immediately, and I had not done the homework, of course, and I was like, okay, this is getting a little embarrassing.
Perfect.
So that was the decision-making point for me.
Is an old friend of mine, formerly a frenemy, in fact. Yes. A brief moment of freneminess, which we'll talk about. His name is Lockhart Steele. That's actually his real name. It's not his porn name, as everybody sort of thinks, that's just too great of a name for a man to have. Lockhart worked in the magazine business before getting his big break working for Nick Denton, the founder of Gawker Media. He grew Gawker Media from a couple of million uniques to tens of millions, and was there, I would say, during the golden era of Gawker, when it became truly a force and was running the joint as the editorial director. He then had a side project called Curbed.com, which is a wonderful blog, if you haven't read it, about real estate in many local markets, including Los Angeles and New York and San Francisco, and I think a couple of others, which we'll get into. And he went out on his own, raised money, and now he's out there with a real estate blog network at probably the worst time in the history of real estate, but he's doing very well. So welcome to the program, Lockhart Steele.
Jason, thanks for having me.
Was that a decent introduction? Pretty accurate?
That was right on the money. That was
okay,
perfect.
good. I always wonder because I don't prepare the introductions. I just say them from my memory, and hopefully I pray that I get it right. But I think
Yeah, no,
perfect.
Right. Perfect.
No,
Okay.
You know, sales is always a.
Yeah, it's a grind it out.
It's a grind.
It's a grind.
And in this economy, we're doing fine, but boy, nothing comes easy.
No, but I mean, the good news is you don't have 17 knuckleheads knocking off your idea.
True.
And trying to compete with you.
No.
And even the knuckleheads at New York Magazine who are finally realizing, gee, Curbed is good, and they're going to try to bite your style, they're going to not put that much effort into it. It's going to be like a bastardized side thing.
Well, New York Magazine, actually, they unfortunately are very
They're
good
killing
at doing
it?
it. They're
Oh,
very good
okay.
at doing it.
Wow.
But, you know,
Anyway,
power
sorry
to them.
about that, Andrew Moss. I didn't mean to diss. My guest, my good friend Keith Richmond is here. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Keith, for those of you who don't know, and now you guys can do whatever you want with the switching, Keith is the CEO and founder of Break.com, which is Break Media. But the domain name is Break.com. It's Break Media. And Break Media, for those people who don't know, is I'm going to pull up on the screen here, just so we just say it right up front, and you guys know that I'm picking people for the show properly, people who you can learn from, because I know you're entrepreneurs. Can we pull up my screen here, and we can keep it very real for a second? I mean, that's real right now, because look, whoop, global people, whoop, 29.5 million, and then, how about this for a boop? Wait, how do I pull back? Okay. Ranked number in the United States, there it is, nice and big, 133.
And that's just one of our sites.
Well, that's the Break Network. It says Break Network right here, right?
Now, Break.com, I think, is probably by itself.
Really? So anyway, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You're an entrepreneur out here in Los Angeles. You guys have been killing it. When did you start the company, and why did you start the company?
So the company started really in the beginning of 2005 when we were looking online and we were looking at the way that traditional men's brands like Maxim, Comedy Central, Spike were building websites and web properties targeting young men. And we saw a real opportunity to get into this space and provide a better user experience, quite honestly, and a more traditionally male-focused editorial voice. And so we looked around, and my partner and I, we found a website we really liked called big-boys.com. No joke, end of 2004, we called them up, we said, we love your site. This speaks to us as what we think Maxim should be speaking to us online. And this is, you got to remember back, you would remember, but you would go to Comedy Central and watch a video and they had a pop-up player that maybe would load, maybe it wouldn't load.
Maybe you got to download Real Player, crashes your machine, and then nobody watches video.
Right, and then Maxim was sort of the same way from an editorial standpoint. It was really cleaned up in a lot of ways. It wasn't being truly what they were like in 1999 or 2000. And so we saw an opportunity to take this website, which we really like the editorial voice behind, and start growing it and growing it and growing it from there. So we partnered with the guy who owned the site back in, who lives in Huntley, Illinois. Eventually, we just bought it from him, although he still works with us and he's our partner. And we started growing it from there, just never trying to be YouTube on the video side, really just trying to stay focused to a core male audience, speak to them, understand them, and provide them entertainment every day.
And so, did you raise capital for this business, or did you fund it yourself?
So we self-funded it at first, and then early on we were focused on revenue. It's odd for a startup, but when it's your own money going into the company, you tend to be more focused on revenue than otherwise. And within a few months we were generating real revenue, real by those standards, $25,000 a month, $30,000 a month, and then soon that became enough to cash flow it. When we couldn't cash flow it, we would just put more money in. But we were always focused on building the business sort of intelligently.
So this is like 5 years ago.
This is 4 years ago.
And
the biggest mistake for Break, I think we were early on. We had a great nucleus of a business, and I think we probably could have actually even more aggressively invested in the business. But we were still not sure what the world was going to look like. Right. And I think as successful as we are, we might even be farther along had we not. We were trying to bootstrap it. Maybe taking money might have been a better strategy in certain cases, because we were making investment decisions based on, do we want to put in $100,000 or do we want to do something else with $100,000 if we needed the money? And at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do, and maybe it wasn't. So I just wish we had overinvested, and now I think we tend to overinvest a little bit, even today, just because of we're confident in our ability to execute. We think we've got great people in place, and if we're wrong, at least we're quantifying what we're wrong on.
So mistake not going big enough.
Yeah, early on. Yeah.
Early on.
Because a lot of things
easy to say.
Yeah.
When things turn out right, but an equal number of entrepreneurs, both of us, who went too big, and they don't exist anymore, and they don't control their companies. They got washed out.
What I was going to say is there's some happy medium there, which is you don't want to overspend on everything, but you got to really think about what might move your business. And a really smart a guy named John Fram, who is a VC at Maveron.
Okay.
I was having lunch with him a couple years, maybe 3 years ago now, and I was talking about how the recruiter was going to be $50,000 for this or that, and I didn't know if I want to hire him. He's like, always hire a recruiter for top line revenue. Like if it's a sales guy, and you're going to get someone, you can replace them later.
Yeah.
And I'm like, duh, always hire a recruiter for top line revenue.
Right.
And I went and I did it and got a great guy, and it's just, and I wish I had done it a year earlier instead of wondering about the $50,000.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's also a process. You have to admit, like, as an entrepreneur, you gotta feel your gut, and if you're gun shy about recruiters, there's some people who are just like, oh my God, I need a receptionist. I gotta get a recruiter. Like I have to pay $10,000 to get somebody in here to clean the the fax machine.
Clearly, you're right. Clearly, you're right. You got to make smart decisions within that realm.
Okay. So let me introduce our guest. I'm going to do something different this week. I'm going to introduce the guest now, so when we do the Ask Jason segment, the entrepreneur who's asking can then maybe get a response from both people. My guest today is a really good friend of mine. We've become good friends over the last couple of years. He's a great entrepreneur. He's done 3 pretty significant companies that I know of. PayPal, you might have heard of it, did pretty well, sold to eBay. Then he went on to Genie, which is doing fabulously, which is one of the most sort of advanced genealogy products out there on the market. I would say the most advanced in terms of a technical basis, very Web 2.0 and moving on to 3.0. And of course, he was the winner of TechCrunch 50 this past year with Yammer, which is a business productivity tool, which is just awesome that we use here at Mahalo. And welcome to the program, David Sachs.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're back.
Glad to be your 5th guest. Only
Fifth guest.
4 others who are more important.
Yes, we obviously do that we do it in order of importance.
Right.
And so Peter Thiel and Elon Musk will be the next 2 guests. Obviously, you're more important than those guys. And
right.
2.0.
Right.
So a lot of common. We both live in Los Angeles. Right. Lots of common DNA.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship in general. How did you get into entrepreneurship? How did you become an entrepreneur? Was it something that you stumbled into? What was your first entrepreneurial venture?
Well, I guess the first entrepreneurial thing I did was PayPal. And the way that happened is, I had about a 6-month conversation with Peter Thiel, who was the CEO, founder of the company. It was called Confinity back then. And the product was this palm beaming thing where you'd beam money from one Palm Pilot to another.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was voted the worst VC-backed idea of 1999. And
Wow, you'll
yeah,
always have that.
yeah, exactly. And you know, the conversation I had with, let's see, right before the dot-com crash in early 2000, was it like February, March?
I think it was, yeah, it was March, April was when when the in 2000 when
right.
the market went from 5,000 Nasdaq to
Right.
3,500, 3,000, and
Right.
everybody's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it crashed this." Then it went down to 1,100. I
Right.
think.
So Peter was raising a financing round for us then, and we got something like 200 million in commitments to invest in a 500 million pre-money valuation.
Hello.
Yeah, but this is when, you know, PayPal had no revenue, no profits, and not even really a business model.
Yeah.
But everyone in the company, this was like the sort of the peak of the dot-com euphoria. Everyone in
Right.
the company was saying, "That's too cheap. You know, this is a bad deal. We can't do this."
And he's like, "Bank it."
Yeah, but he literally kicked everyone's butts to get that deal done. And
Right.
literally, we got the deal done, I think, the Friday before Black Monday. I think if we had waited just
no
one
PayPal.
more day,
Game over.
Literally game over, there would not have been a PayPal. He was the only one who really saw the bubble for what it was.
A bubble.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we ended up compromising and only taking 100 million of the 200 million or something
And
like
you guys
that.
felt really stupid about that.
Yeah,
afterwards.
yeah, exactly. But we ended up actually raising more money after the crash. But you know, that was like one example of where if he just, you know, if it wasn't for his contrarian thinking, like we would have been swept away with, you know, the rest
Yeah.
of the bubble companies.
It was
Yeah.
profitable.
Yeah, I mean the question is always for whom. You
For
know, in the
whom,
movie
right.
business, right? The studio makes a lot of money, but
Right.
you know the accounting shenanigans are well known.
Yeah. So did you guys make, and the people who funded it, you guys
Yeah,
make anything?
yeah,
or?
no, we did fine, but
Right.
you know, a success in the movie business for sort of a producer entrepreneur might be $1 million success. In the internet space, it's like $1 billion success.
Right,
And
right.
but the execution risk is about the same. I mean, it's actually just as hard,
Right.
I think, to make a successful movie.
And in
as
some ways, it's got to be more frustrating because in the internet, you control your destiny.
Right.
It's like, oh, nobody you have to get permission from to put your
Right.
website up.
Exactly. I mean, and that really is the key difference. Is that in the internet space, you know, you're building the product, right? Everyone works at the company, and you're making progress on it every day.
Yeah.
Whereas the movie business, it's completely fragmented. Everyone who works on the movie is basically a contractor, and it just takes a long time to put these things together.
So let me introduce our guest. I've been waiting to have him on the program. He's a new entrepreneur, first-time entrepreneur. I met him first at the TechCrunch 40 conference where he launched DocStock. DocStock, a couple of my friends are investors in it. I think Matt Coffin's in it, and some other folks. I'm not an investor in it, but I think it's a very groovy company, and I've learned to really admire Jason. He's a very hardcore entrepreneur, very blue-collar, just roll up your sleeves, get to work kind of guy. Also has given me a tremendous amount of advice and gives back to the community. He hosts a local sort of meetup here in Santa Monica once a month. That's become very popular. Welcome to the program, Jason Nazar.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome to have you here. You've watched the show before. You know what you're in for.
I have.
Jason, you've been working on, I guess, DocStock now for 2 years, come this fall.
Yes.
You launched at TechCrunch 40.
Yeah.
Tell me, how did you come up with the idea for it, and why did you build the company? Why did you start it?
Sure. So I was going to business school and law school in Southern California, and I had started a consulting company. I was a horrible student. I never went to class, never did my work. I was always trying to do something entrepreneurial. And so I used to, there was a small company of us, and we would write business plans for startups. And they always had needs for different kinds of professional documents. And I felt that a lot of times lawyers would charge you for things that were just templates. They were business documents that were out there. And I thought, this was mid-2006, there should be something like YouTube for documents where you could get anything you needed and people all over the world could post their stuff. And I just started working on it. I created this little schlocky PowerPoint presentation I showed to everybody in law school. I think it's on DocStock. It's called The Genesis of DocStock. You can see what I did. And I just thought that there should be a repository where you could find virtually any document online. That's what we started working on 2 years ago. And honestly, one of the big things that helped get our name out there is, you know, we got picked by you and Mike to preview the company at TechCrunch 40, and that kind of gave us a launch pad for a first-time internet entrepreneur and someone down in LA to get out to a lot of folks.
And so take us through raising money for it. You just start, I mean, you're in business school,
Yeah,
a law school.
I was both, yeah.
Yeah. And so then you decide you're going to go raise money for this.
I did.
Did you go to your parents or did you go to like other business people? How did you break in? Because you were an outsider.
Yeah.
An outsider. Like it's not like you were working at TechCrunch or in the industry or working at Yahoo and Google and had this idea. You were straight out of school.
Yeah, I was in school.
So you're in school. So
Yeah.
how did you meet all these investors in LA and sort of network your way in?
Yeah. So the first thing I did, and I know you and I talked about this, is I put up my own money. I didn't have a lot of it, but I think that's really important whenever you're trying to raise money. Because if you're someone's like, hey, I'm going to go ask a bunch of people for money. So I had $20,000 left in my savings account. I put it all in. I maxed out my credit cards and took on $20,000 of debt. And then I took out student loans that my dad still does not know about. So thank goodness he's an 80-year-old Persian Jewish guy and is probably not watching the show.
Yep.
You know. But I have debt still from my student loan debt. So I took on as much risk as I could possibly handle. One of the things I did do in school, because I wasn't a really good student, is I was always setting up meetings with really successful rich folks.
Right.
And they got to know me over 4 years. So by the time I had an actual business I really believed in, they stepped up to the plate. So the first investor ever in Baidu, the chairman of the board of Baidu, was the father of one of the interns I had hired in my consulting company.
Wow.
And he said to me, I will give you $250,000 if you can raise another $250,000.
Ah.
So we got, I'd been introduced to Brett Brewer, who was one of the co-founders of Intermix, and he came in and invested. Robin Richards, who was one of the co-founders and the founding president of MP3.com, he had sold the company to, I think, Vivendi Universal. It was the biggest deal at the time for $400 million. He came in. The namesake of the Pepperdine Business School, the Graziodio family, the Graziodio School of Business at Pepperdine, came in. And so I slowly started.
So how do you meet these folks? You just met them through networking, or because I mean, people are watching the show going, I don't have any connections. How do I meet the guy who is the investor in Baidu? How do you meet these people?
It's as simple as what you said. I mean, if you just ask, people will respond. And I think the biggest mistake people make in sales and in startups is they just don't ask for what they want.
Right.
And so if you ask 9 out of 10 super successful people to meet with you, they'll probably say no, but 1 out of 10 will say yes.
Right, and that's what you're banking on.
Yeah, and I just spent 4 years in grad school. I literally think I stole the list of the alumni at Pepperdine that donated more than $1,000, and every week I just called and emailed one of them saying, could we get together for coffee? And I never asked them for anything. I didn't ask them for a job. I said, what can I do to help you out? And one of my secrets is, and I think it's a very good thing if you're in school, is I literally asked 500 people to be my mentor.
Right.
I was like a mentee whore.
Right. One of my good friends is here. Don Dodge from Microsoft is here. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You've seen the program before?
I've watched every show.
Every show?
I have.
Oh, well, thanks. That's really great.
I was just going to say, so the question is when you see a lot of advice and a lot of information on the blogs on approaching angels and VCs, in a situation like ours where we're more focused on the expertise that someone can bring to the venture than the money itself. Of course, the money will be great for things like growth and advertising and things, but really what we're focused on is the expertise that the person can bring to the equation. So I'm curious, what's different about finding those opportunities and what's different about structuring those deals?
I would say the best thing to do is to bring these people on in an advisor role and worry about the investment later. If you ask them to be an advisor to you and maybe offer them a little equity to do it, then they may naturally, once they get a taste of it and they're excited about your business, they may give you more. And so you can start just by emailing those people, calling them and saying, listen, I don't want to ask you for money or anything like that. I really respect what you've done. Here is what I respect about what you've done. Something they've done, right? Research it. And say, I'm doing something where I think that your experience would be invaluable. Is there any way, and I'll meet you anywhere at any time, Sunday morning at 9 a.m., Saturday night at 11, whatever time you want, anywhere, anytime, just eat a cup of coffee and pick your brain about my idea, because I really could use your help. Most people are scared to send that email, but there are very forward, sometimes obnoxious, sometimes crude, sometimes aggressive, sometimes brilliant, sometimes sincere, whatever, people who do that, and they put themselves out there and ask for advice, and you know what? You don't need to get everybody to do it, but you get 1 or 2 people, all of a sudden it becomes life-changing. And so you have to be a little bold and send that note to people, and if they get to know you, and they like you, and they like what you're doing, they have an affinity for it, you've transferred the enthusiasm, now the investing in it becomes like, oh, well, it's obvious I'll invest in this. I would like upside in it. I'm helping the person out. Why not? So I think you should first make a human connection with those people and get them to talk to you and give you free advice. and then maybe talk to them about coming on board as a investor. I'd flip it a little bit. What do you think, Don?
I agree. Don't take the money, don't take the investment first. Get a personal relationship with them, have them be an advisor, and then go from there.
Yeah.
You're right.
So with us this week is Atif, I pronounced it correct? Atif, got it correct. Rafiq, who is the head of Yahoo Local for North America, which is a pretty big title. But he's a former entrepreneur. He started some companies, and he actually worked at AOL back in the
Back in the day, in the mid-90s, between 96 and 99.
And what did you do at AOL back then?
I was one of the original corp dev and strategy people. Well, I was an accidental entrepreneur, and what I mean by that is I moved out to Silicon Valley because having been at AOL and loving the web starting in the mid-90s, I wanted to be part of a startup. I actually didn't want to start a company of my own, but it just kind of landed in my lap, and that's how I think entrepreneurship tends to go. It just happens, all the stars align. So in my particular case, there are a few AOL execs that became angel investors. They identified two very talented people who are my good friends today, who are my co-founders. They're two Stanford PhDs. They felt that a business person would be a good complement and round out the team, and said, hey, you know, if you guys come up with a reasonable idea, we'll actually fund you. So we were pretty passionate about search technology, especially in some areas that weren't being addressed, not consumer-facing, but around buzz. And mining, kind of doing data mining for the web to help brands and advertisers understand what's being said about them.
And what year was this that you were doing buzz search?
We got funded in 2001 to do that.
Great timing.
Yeah, exactly.
Tough time. So, but what's interesting about what you said, and it's a good tip for a lot of potential entrepreneurs out there, is that you got funded by the people you used to work with who did well.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's people who knew me in particular. And we had worked together for years, so they know what they were going to get into.
Today's guest, Lauren Bindell, who is the CEO of Savings.com. You actually played.
I did.
At the Wall Street Journal's D conference, the underground poker game.
Yeah. I left with more money than I came with, so that's a good thing.
So what did you think of the game?
It was awesome.
It's a pretty great game.
It was better than the conference, actually.
Really?
The level of people that were there.
The level of people at that game.
Well, the conference was amazing, but the networking in that room was amazing.
I think I like a little canned clapping. And do we have? Is Alex actually working the TriCaster now? We have definitely a definitive person switching on the TriCaster, so we get the good shots. So welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Tell us, what is Savings.com?
Sure. Simplest way to describe it, I guess, is coupons, deals, and promotions, and then it's a popularity contest of them. So you can go to Savings.com if you want to buy something from a particular merchant, see all of their deals ranked by popularity. Or if you don't know which merchant you want to buy from, but you know what category you want to buy a laptop, you can go search laptops, excuse me, and see all of our laptop deals ranked by popularity. So the consumers like it because it's not necessarily us showing the deal that makes us the most money. The deal that sits number one could be a deal that we don't get any money from whatsoever. But long term, we develop a relationship with the consumer, they trust it, they come back and use it, and we make money off a lot of the deals that are on the site. And we make money through affiliate relationships, CPC, or usually performance-based relationships with the merchants. If we're driving sales for them, we get paid commissions.
Right, and so here it is, I have it on my screen, and by looking at it, I'm thinking this is Dig for coupons, or Dig for deals.
It was absolutely an inspiration for the company. It was before my time when the original vision was brought about. I was brought on as the CEO January 1, 2007. And we restarted the company shortly thereafter with this vision and this strategy, and grew it from a few hundred visitors a month or whatever to over 1 million now.
Wow, significant.
And yeah, we grew 400% last year. We're on track to grow 400% this year. We were profitable as of the end of September 2007, but just barely. And since then, I've pretty much been putting every single dollar we've made back into the company, and we've grown it from a handful of people to close to 50 now.
And so the company's been in existence now for, this is year 3, I guess? Just over 2.
Just over 2.
Just over 2. And has it raised venture capital, or?
We raised money September last year, USVP, $4 million.
U.S. venture partners. So let me introduce my guest. Chris Tolles is here. He is the CEO of TWiST.com, which is a local news aggregator or something. He's going to explain what it is during the interview. But also, interestingly, he was one of the founders of NewWho, which became the Open Directory project, which many people know as DMOZ.
Right. Do you think it's best to get the audience first and then worry about monetizing later? Or should you already have the business model set and then be like, this is how we're going to make money, and then we go?
This is a great question. It depends on how much resources you have, I think. If you have a decent amount of resources, you're able to raise venture capital, you can take a long approach like Twitter has taken, or even Facebook took, which is, let's not worry about making money. Let's worry about building an audience and building a product that people love. And a lot of VCs will give a hard time to their entrepreneurs, and you've probably experienced this. Why are you worrying about revenue right now? Just get to 1 million customers and see how they like the product. Don't even think about revenue. Just make a product that people love, focus 100% on that. And then there's other people who, when the market is down, when it's a bad market like it is now, they start riding people like, oh, you have to make money, you have to make money. If YouTube or Facebook or Twitter wanted to maximize revenue, they could put up trailers and roadblocks and instantly have tons of revenue. And I think that's what savvy investors realize. So I think it's good to have an idea of what the revenue model is and then raise money, build an incredible product, and then focus on monetization. But if you don't have the ability to raise money, obviously, you're going to need to make some money to keep it going. So
yeah, there's a card game called Hearts where there's a strategy called Shoot the Moon, which is if you go for it, you win big, and if you don't, but if you lose a little bit, you lose everything. And I think that is kind of what goes on in startups. If you look at the biggest guys in the web space, all of them didn't worry about revenue for a long time. Well, Google, Yahoo, the other folks in their YouTube, none of these guys worried about making a dollar at first, and what they worried about was making audience. And so the marketer in me would say, get to the dominant place in your business as quickly as possible. Try to just tell everybody that it doesn't matter for as long as possible, because if you can actually, I think that certainly in the web space, the key is to create a monopoly. And if you look at anybody who's making money, they become the dominant player. And I can't think of anybody who's extremely successful who has not essentially created a choke on everybody else trying to get in their space. It's really hard to do that, and most times you're gonna chicken out. Like, I certainly am a fan of actually getting to the middle and making a fair amount of money for my investors and my team. But if you're gonna make it big, I think you have to look at the audience first and foremost, and the people who really do, it's almost like they don't sell out accidentally. Like, if you look at Larry Ellison at Oracle, he tried to sell all his stock. He tried to get rid of his company, and no one would buy it from him. And then all of a sudden he's like, damn, I'm the second richest man in the world. If you look at Google, there were several times where Google came close to getting acquired that you find out in the buy and buy, and they tried to sell for like a lot less than they could have gotten just because they were, like in 2000 it sucked, and they couldn't. They didn't quite get what they wanted, and they sort of built market share, and then they stole the Overture model, and bam, they're in business. Life is good. A lot of people, though, don't have this problem with figuring out a business model. Like if you're Microsoft or Salesforce, actually success equals dollar success. But they really concentrated on selling marketing. If you look at Salesforce, they put way, way more money into marketing to be very, very unprofitable for a long time to become the #1 player in the market. So even if you have a business model, it's really a bigger question, which is, do you focus on instant revenue or do you focus on market share? I would say to win big, you got to focus on market share. But for a lot of people, it's, hey, focusing on revenue doesn't suck, especially in this time. You know, you kind of look at, hey, there's a real question here. If you can afford to fail, probably consider market share. But if you can see, hey, I can make a little bit of money for my team, I'm willing to take a second place, then maybe revenue is good.
Well, Bill Shrink's CEO and founder is Peter Pham, and he's here with us today, so please join me in welcoming Peter Pham to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. One of my favorite entrepreneurs. We met, I don't know, a couple years ago. You were sending me email after email about some dinner and something going on, and of course I don't respond, and I'm just like, I don't know, it's just somebody inviting me to dinner. And so Tyler vetted it, I think, and he realized you're a sane person. And you did this incredibly cool dinner in LA.
Called Beta South.
Called Beta South.
It was for 5 years maybe?
5 years.
And then before that, mostly sales roles, so sales and business development, so 7, 8, 9 years. And
so basically you put in almost a decade of just grinding it out, sales and biz dev. And biz dev is really still sales, it's higher level sales.
It is.
This is a very important lesson for people, because people come into startup companies. I always tell them, you got to do one of two things: make the product or sell the product.
If you make the product, you got a good shot at getting the CEO slot or the president slot or a top slot. Right. And if you sell the product, that's another great way to get to the top slot, because those two things are the truth. Right. If you make the product, that's the truth. You know, you get to see the users either love it, hate it, or be indifferent. Right. If you sell, you get to see the customers love it, hate it, or be indifferent. And you have to get through those hurdles.
So, great guests this week. We have Brad Hunstable and John Hamm with us. Everybody knows Brad from Ustream and John Hamm from Mad Men. No, here they are. This is the first time we've had two guests. These guys are the founders of Ustream. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
But you also got to commit. I mean, if you believe in it, I don't know anything about your space, but if you, I was working for the Perot family, doing in a completely different industry, and I had a kid, and I left for 6 months. I mean, you just, in my opinion, if you believe in it, you have to commit. And if you really want to be successful, because like you were saying, where's the gradient for you of where you want to take this? At some point, you have to commit. And if you don't fully commit, that gradient's probably not.
You have to know when you're going to flip that switch. And let me be very clear with everybody who's watching. What you'll learn in college, graduate school, and all this other nonsense means nothing. The greatest entrepreneurs didn't go to school. So if that is any indication of what it takes to be an entrepreneur, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, they all dropped out. They're not gonna, there's nothing that people in academia can teach you about running a company. They're in academia, which is the most non-competitive entrepreneurial place on the planet. The opposite of entrepreneurship is academia. They can teach you nothing about being an entrepreneur. That being said, there are skills that you can learn in school, like, you know, finance, marketing, blah, 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 blah. We have a great guest this week, Matt Mixkovich. I pronounced it correct, Matt?
Yes, you did.
Mixkovich. It's like Mixoplex. You know who Mixoplex is?
No,
You don't know who Mixoplex is? You know who Mixoplex is?
The cartoon character?
Mixoplex was, I'm pulling it up right now, if I can find it. I don't even know how to spell it. He was like the evil, impish guy in,
yes.
What was the
very small?
He was like the he was like the Galactus of the DC world or something like that. Somebody in the chat room some nerd in the chat room will tell me who Mixoplex was, please. But you had to say his name backwards or something. And he showed up.
That's right.
It was some superhero stuff. Anyway, Mixkovich is the founder of SitePoint Forums. He doesn't want to say SitePoint Forums, but you guys probably know it as SitePoint Forums. But SitePoint's a lot of other things, a publishing company. He started this thing 10 years ago. It makes millions of dollars a year. He also does 99 designs. Matt, this is the interview segment. SitePoint, I know, because I would always check that out. People are on there talking about SEO, programming, how to build websites. Why did you, that was the first thing you started, right?
That's
Why
right.
did you, how old were you when you started that? Why did you start it?
I was 15 years old when I started the precursor to SitePoint, and basically what happened is I was learning how to build a website as a personal hobby for myself,
right.
And I started doing lots and lots of research, finding all these cool tools and resources and websites, but they were very, very dispersed. I had to do a lot of legwork to find all the cool things and all the information that I needed in order to learn how to build and market a website. So I basically started compiling everything that I was learning into a one-page website called Webmaster Resources. Just links to SEO tools, HTML references, link exchange, those banner exchanges, sites, web rings, all those things. And then eventually I started adding content on top of that as well, tutorials and guest articles and so on, and gained a lot of traction very, very quickly. This was 1997, 1998, so everyone was getting onto the web. They wanted to learn how to build their own website. I quickly became the go-to destination for that. Within a couple weeks of launching, I was in LA Times, USA Today, Washington Post, Windows Magazine, which at the time had...
And what is this, 1999?
1998.
1998. So you're 15 years old in 1998. And what do your parents think of all this? Like, you basically got a site that everybody's reading, and was there any money being made at this point, or were you just going to your parents saying, like, can I have $100 to get a server somewhere?
No, I started making money through the ad networks, a couple $100 a month, which very quickly became tens of thousands of dollars per month, especially as the venture capital ramped up and the internet companies were just trying to spend money as quickly as possible. So they were calling me up. I was at Starbucks on my lunch hour taking internet advertising orders from big companies.
While you were in high school?
While I was in high school.
And so your dad's a construction guy. So your dad's probably making, I don't know, 50 grand a year, 60 grand a year. I don't know what a construction guy makes. Probably not more than my dad made as a bartender.
and he sees you making $10,000 a month, what is he like? Are you a criminal? Are you in the mob? Are you selling drugs? He must be really concerned.
They were very supportive, but they just didn't think it would last. They didn't think it had any legs to it,
Right.
that it would fizzle out and die after a couple of months. There was a fluke accident,
Right.
Rather than a sustainable business. But as they went on and on and on, eventually, they said, fine, you don't have to go to college, you don't have to go to university. You obviously know more than we do about this, so go for it and good luck.
So you skipped college?
I skipped college.
And point is, I love sending videos, I love sending images, whatever, text, but I like doing it for my BlackBerry or for my iPhone, something quick. And I wanted to post to my WordPress blog, and I wanted to post to my Twitter all at the same time. And somebody told me about Postgres. I check it out, and I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted and more. I went in, I put in 10 different services, Flickr, Facebook, MySpace, Tumblr, WordPress, every possible service I use. And then when I email a video to it, it transcribes and posts the video on Flickr, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere, and Postgres. A brilliant service. Postgres, whatever, it's great. Gary, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So tell me, I described my experience with the product. Is my experience unique, and was this the reason you created it? Was this created out of your own personal frustration?
You know, this product is 2 years old now?
It's exactly one. It's about a year and a month.
I mean,
or
we
so.
wrote about this last summer.
This Week in Startups is to celebrate the startups that have succeeded, but were, of course, launched on TechCrunch.com.
Yes.
I agree.
So how do you guys make money? There's no ads on the site.
Yep.
That's all volume.
Yeah, so you're losing about $3 or $4 per customer, and at the rate you're going to have burned through all the money on the planet as well in 4 years. How do you stop this?
We're actually an incredibly lean team. So I mean,
how many
actually,
people?
3 people and a contractor. So
your staff is 4 people. You've
yeah,
done all this with 4 people.
We just got an office for the first time about a month ago.
Sometimes simplicity
In
isn't
North Beach.
actually hard. I mean, it's
Right.
They've just done something very simple and very easy to use, and
Elegant.
users are flocking to it.
I think you have to do less, actually. Like, people try too many things.
They really do.
Yeah.
That's the Twitter rule. I mean, it's Ed Williams, design.
Well,
do less.
There's a couple features I wouldn't mind on Twitter. To be honest. Like maybe just one feature a year or every other year.
Threaded
like
messages.
That. Yeah.
Statistics.
I mean, but they're focusing on uptime, and I'm sure within the next 10 years they'll get that platform stable. So.
14. We've done 14 shows. I've been waiting to have our current guest on from the beginning. He's one of the smartest people I know, and also a very good friend. His name is Roelof Botha, and here he is. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jason.
For full disclosure and background, Roelof is on the board of Mahalo and was the first investor in the company. Sequoia is on our board, and we get to spend a lot of time together. We also work on the TechCrunch 50 conference, which is coming up Monday and Tuesday, and was an early supporter of that. And before that at PayPal.
That's right.
The first investor, I believe, in YouTube, or the first venture investor in YouTube, which was a huge success. On the board of Meebo, which is a huge site, and a bunch of other companies. So welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Right, we've seen many, not me personally, but we've seen many different economic cycles before. And a lot of the greatest investments from Sequoia were made in the darkest of days. Cisco is an investment that Don Valentine led here in December 1987. This is 2 months after Black Monday and the crash of October '87, we made the Cisco investment. What a fabulous investment that ended up being. And the sort of entrepreneurs that can carve out niches and survive when times are this tough end up flourishing in the long run. And it's almost like your DNA gets shaped by these very adverse conditions and makes you tougher and stronger.
Absolutely. It's like the kids who grow up in a hard environment, they have an easier time later on. The kids who have it easy early on, they have a harder time later on because they're lost. They don't know how to work. They don't know how to deal with adversity, and they have all kinds of problems, drugs, whatever. They go on sabbatical, and they never go back to work. So. Let me introduce my guest, because we may have some banter during when we have these other interviews, so you can jump in when we talk to some of the winners, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on some of the people we'll have on the phone. But with me today, very excited, Brandon Kessler from Challenge Post. Welcome to the program.
Hi, really psyched to be here.
And develop those relationships. This is why I feel very safe with my investment in your company, because you're doing street-level stuff. That's how I operate. Like, actually do the work and actually do the hard. Nobody wants to do the hard work, at these companies. They all just want to do the strategy or sit in some stupid meeting or spend venture capital money. Like, it's about selling.
Absolutely. Flyers in your back pocket all day long. I know, you were famous for that. Silicon Alley Insider, you had that. Who's this guy with Silicon Alley Insider carrying around?
Put Silicon Alley Reporter on a...
sorry.
It's okay.
Reporter.
Silicon Alley Insider
So sorry.
is
it's the newer blog. Yes, Reporter.
But I used to have a little luggage cart, those cheap little ones. And the way I got that idea was I used to watch like the Jamaican guys go around town selling umbrellas. And I was like, those guys are hustling, man, selling umbrellas like crazy, and they've got to be making bank. And they would have these like little shopping carts, and they would pull out their stuff. So I was like, I'll just put my magazines in the back of that. And the backstory was I ordered all these copies of the magazine. So a pallet came to my little like $800 a month office. And I was like, okay, I got to get these to people. So I went to the post office, and I realized, oh my God, if I've got to send out 1,000 of these, it's going to cost me like $1 each.
Yep.
Oh my God, I don't have any money left. I can't. So how do you get 1,000 magazines to Razorfish's office or Seth Goldstein's office for Site Specific? The only way I could get them there was to bring them myself. So I put it on a cart, I walked around, and then it became a tradition. By the 5th or 6th issue, I could send them by UPS, but I said, can you, Alex, mark that? You got it. So I said, frack it. Just cut it out. I'll say frack it, or you can beep it. I said, frack it, I'm going to just go. And that's how I got my scoops. I would go to the office of Razorfish. I'd be putting them in there in the lobby, and the receptionist knew where I was. And then I'd see somebody else in there. I'd see Fred Wilson walking into somebody's office. I'd say, what are you doing here, Fred? He'd be like, oh, nothing. I was like, oh, well, I know Flatiron's now going to be investing in this company. So
You have to be out there to create your own opportunities, your own luck.
that's it. You make your own luck.
That's it.
You were lucky like 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
That's it. It's another 15-year success story in the making. With me today, Ryan Block and Peter Rojas of GDGT.com, which is an incredible gadget site, but you may know them from their previous sites. Peter founded Gizmodo.com, the #2 gadget website in the world. And then Peter went on to found Engadget.com, the #1 gadget site in the world, with Ryan Block as his #2, and then eventually Ryan became the editor-in-chief. So thanks for being on the program, guys. Welcome to Los Angeles.
Thanks, and thanks for accommodating us. You know, and I wasn't. I mean, I was going through a period where I wasn't sure what was going to happen, because remember, people forget how small things were at this point, and how like it could have gone a lot of different directions. And the
economy sucked.
The economy sucked. I mean, Nick's strategy was to have single-person sites, bloggers working half-time or part-time. He didn't want to have more than one editor. He didn't want to have full-time people. He didn't want to have
more than 10 posts.
Yeah, he wanted it to be very like
lightweight,
very lightweight, and
pay people $1,000 a month.
Yeah, I mean, I made $12.50 a month.
$12.50 a month was the
when I
starting
quit. I had to fight to get above 1,000. and
they still do those.
Yeah, I'm sure there's still a lot of fighting there. And I had to work really hard to. I mean, I had to really think really hard about like what I wanted to do after Gizmodo, because I couldn't survive. I was going broke.
Right.
And my options were go and flip it into a magazine job like Elizabeth did.
Right.
And I had actually turned down a job at Money Magazine to be their technology editor.
Right.
And I was
Which
like,
is a pretty significant gig. That might have been like 50 grand, 60 grand, 70 grand.
It was a 70 or 80 grand a year job for someone who, and I made, I mean, in 2003, I went back.
35.
I made $13,000 that year.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, nothing.
Yeah, kids, if you're thinking about getting in the writing business, not much has really changed in that regard.
And so...
that's true. People talk about journalism being like such a bad gig now, and it's like, you know what?
It's always
been bad.
It's always
what are you talking about?
You've never made money.
Condé Nast starting salary was like 18,000, 19,000.
There are fewer bad gigs now.
Right.
That's the thing.
It's a smaller pool of miserable jobs.
Yeah, it's a smaller pool of miserable.
More people fighting for those miserable jobs.
When I first met Peter, that was in 2001. You just moved to New York.
Yeah.
And you were still freelancing for like Wired and a couple of other publications. And I remember we hadn't talked for like 6 or 8 months or something, and I heard you're doing this gadget blog, and I was like, all right, well, you know, I don't know, what's a gadget blog going to be? You know, there was no prototype.
Right.
Yeah. You know, there was nothing out there like that in the time. So, and then I followed Gizmodo for a while, kind of casually, and then I eventually followed you over to Engadget when you guys had linked up and eventually started that, and then reached out. But anyway, I think we'll get to that in a moment.
We're on the cusp of it, in fact.
Yeah.
But you had met him before.
Yeah.
I know him since like 2001.
Right.
Yeah.
So, wow, small world. I didn't realize that you knew him before me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Just through friends.
Just through friends in New York. Yeah.
Being in New York.
So,
then I come to you and say, basically, hey, I'll make you a partner in this business.
Yeah.
You'll get to own a chunk of it, and we could build something special here. And you said, that sounds better than getting paid $12.50 a month.
Yeah, I mean, it actually took me a little while to sort of to pull the trigger. I mean, I had a few weeks where I really kind of went back and forth, and it was like there was a lot of risk. And you have to remember, like, at the time, blogging was so small that people felt like the natural order of blogging was that you would have one blog for each subject.
Right, why would you have two?
There was like, yeah, why would you have two gadget blogs? Like, you already
Makes
have
sense.
a gadget blog.
Yeah, you can't make a second.
Yeah.
Now there's like 2,000 gadget
there's
blogs.
thousands of them.
Boing, boing gadgets.
2 gadget blogs.
But that was literally like how people like thought about things. And I kind of thought, am I going to leave Gizmodo and then just, I mean, what happens if I fail? Like, what happens if it doesn't work out? What happens if, like, the audience doesn't come with me at all? Like, what if they just don't care? And then I'll have,
somehow
like,
you got over that risk.
I got over that risk. I mean, my father, like, actually, I went home for Christmas, and I sat down with him, and I'm like, I mean, this is like the biggest decision I've had to make as, you know, basically my life so far, and I don't know, you know, what to do, because, I mean, I know that I don't want to go to law school, which was one of the other options I had at the time, and I turned down magazine jobs because it just didn't feel like the right thing I wanted to do. But I kind of felt a little bit trapped, right? Like I felt like I had this thing and like I could give it up.
And somebody else gets it.
Yeah, and somebody else gets it, and then all of a sudden, like,
smart money job's gone.
Yeah,
you didn't take that. You're an idiot.
So it's like I had to kind of make that tough decision, and it was painful. My dad said, you know, if you don't do it, you're gonna, not just the typical, like, my dad didn't say that, like, you regret the things you do, you regret, you know, whatever, don't do, whatever. He didn't say something like that. He said, look, he's like, you are a tremendously talented person, and like, I think that you have to do the thing that you really want to do, and what you really want to do is you really want to take blogging and do something great with it. You want to do it full time. Like, this is what you know. He's like, you're happy, you know, and I was like, well, that's true. I mean, and that was the whole point of doing Engadget, was I wanted to take blogging and I wanted to be able to do with blogging something that I actually couldn't do with Gizmodo, which was do it full time, build out a team, really invest like 20%.
You were
of my
throttled because Nick Denton had a vision.
Yeah.
That he looked at you as a worker bee, a cog in the wheel. You were like the servers or an Arion chair or whatever.
He looked at it as interchangeable.
Yeah, you're just
the writers
a widget.
were interchangeable to him.
Right. At that time, to his credit, he now looks at it differently, I think.
Yeah, I think
slightly.
I mean, Gawker's model became more like the Weblogs Inc. model, which is like, you know,
they evolved together.
Exactly, the teams of people and stuff like that.
Sure.
And so, you know, we left and started Engadget, and
you know what's interesting though? I was listening to that story of you, like, this is like the hardest decision of my life to make. And now I look at you like as CEO and founding these companies and doing all this stuff, and you make much more difficult decisions like every day.
Yeah, I mean,
looking back on that decision, doesn't it look like the easiest, most obvious decision ever?
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, but
but even if it didn't work out, what's the downside risk? Losing a $1,200 a month job.
Yeah, I know.
So thanks for having us. And I thought we'd just have a simple conversation, a little bit about startups and community, since that was the topic of the evening. You're now at MySpace.
I am.
After running Userplane and selling it to AOL, you have like 24 people at Userplane?
Yeah, maybe
like 20 people.
20, 30, 40.
Right.
Yeah.
And then at some point, our old boss, John Miller, calls you and says, how would you like to have 1,000 employees or 1,500, I think, at MySpace?
Yeah, we didn't go over the number in the conversation, but he was excited about bringing me on as a team to help change some of the destination of MySpace.
And so most people would say, gosh, you're an entrepreneur, you sold your last company, you did very well, you got your whole life in front of you, and now you're going to go to MySpace, which some would argue is on a downward trend, flat trend, tons of challenges, this huge community that I guess we'll get into why maybe it stalled a little bit, but just take me through your thinking of why you would take on such a challenge. It sounds to me like, you know, a couple of years of pain.
It could be a couple of years of pain. I mean, in between Userplane and MySpace, I ran a company called Savo that was 100 and so person company with offices here in LA and up in Canada, and we built an operation here in LA, and that taught me a lot about content, and I really enjoyed that mission. And that was a company that was already up and running that I took over and I started building. I think with MySpace, it was too interesting of an opportunity, right? You've got this massive community, millions, you know, hundreds of millions of users, based in LA with a massive staff that hadn't really innovated in quite a while. You had a whole new management team coming in, a ton of support from News Corp. It just felt like a really interesting challenge to take on. And because you now have the pressures of scaling, right, which become very real at certain size, that it prohibits a certain amount of growth within the business. And I think MySpace, just like any of these businesses, AOL, Yahoo, anyone, hit a certain point where innovation becomes harder and harder to do, right? And MySpace hit that point, Facebook's going to hit, all these groups will hit this point when they hit certain sizes. And then I think the question is, how do you reinvent that company and reinvigorate innovation within that organization so that it can continue to grow? And that's actually what we're kind of in the middle of right now.
So how much of that is just a management sense of, people get used to their systems and they can't conceive of innovations. You actually have to change the culture. And how much of it was, well, it just happened to be that the stuff we were built on was really, really difficult and we had to go do things very differently.
I mean, I think there's no doubt that there's always going to be challenges around a platform. Because up front, you would never take the right amount of time to actually build out a platform that could scale to 100 million plus users a month, because it would take you a very, very long time and very expensive from a capital perspective. Right? And then second to that is, so you say, no matter what, you're always going to go through platform innovation. And at some point, you have to pay off the technical debt. Right? Like, you're always going to accumulate technical debt. At some point, you got to pay it off. When you pay it off, you're taking valuable resources and putting them on problems that don't necessarily create forward-facing, feature innovation, but creates a platform for innovation in the future. Which is, we've been paying off a lot of technical debt. I'm at a point now where I'm very excited about where MySpace goes, because I can say, you know what, there's a lot we can do now that we weren't able to do in the past because of this technical debt being paid off. Now, better planning, better management, better strategy, better teams, better cycles, that maybe you can, I think you can relieve certain pressures, but these companies grow extremely quickly, right? I mean, Twitter is down frequently, right? You look at the scale and speed of these developments, and at the end of the day, it's hard to predict and make sure that you're completely staffed appropriately. And
even Facebook, I have a problem sometimes logging in and it times out.
Exactly. It happens all the time, right?
I've got a great guest here. My friend Kimball Musk is here from One Riot. Thanks for stopping in.
Thanks
you
a
just
lot.
happened to be in town with the fam, doing something. Business, pleasure, a little bit of both?
Birthday weekend.
Birthday weekend. Whose birthday? Yours?
It's my birthday, yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
I've been involved in quite a few startups, but my first one was Zip2. I did it out of school with my brother, Elon.
Yep, sure.
And we sold that in '99. That was an incredible run. That was basically '95 to '99.
To the New York Times.
No, we sold it to Compaq.
Oh, Compaq.
Compaq owned AltaVista, and they wanted to merge our company and AltaVista to create a Yahoo killer, because we were basically all about content and the portals and so forth, and they were the search engine.
You guys were like a content management system or something?
Yeah, we were basically the most advanced content management technology in Web 1.0. Awesome. And so it was a great exit for us. And then I was an angel investor to PayPal with my brother, being involved there. I was a startup CEO for a company called Everdream, which is actually my cousins founded it, which are, it's a little family mafia going on, but lots of fun. And that had a great exit actually 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And now I sit on the board of Tesla Motors and on the board of SpaceX and One Riot. I have a restaurant, The Kitchen. Which is,
now that's an interesting thing. So after PayPal, I guess that was, and after that whole sort of adventure, down market, you're living in Colorado. You left the Valley.
Yeah.
You were living in the Valley, went to Colorado.
Well, no, it's actually quite funny. I feel myself pretty lucky. So I left the Valley and I went to New York and I studied cooking.
And you started cooking in New York?
I studied. I studied there and I started.
So you make all this money and then you decide, screw it, I'm going to go learn how to cook.
Exactly.
And where'd you go? The Culinary Institute?
French Culinary Institute.
French Culinary Institute.
And graduated from there and decided I was going to do a restaurant. Started the restaurant and I moved out in 2002 to work on a restaurant in Boulder, Colorado. Got the restaurant going. It's turned out to be one of the very, very successful
This is The Kitchen, which is
in Boulder, Colorado.
People talk about you have to it doesn't take reservations, and you have to wait online for a long time, and it's always sold out, but it's very egalitarian.
We call it a community restaurant, and it's a new concept. It's sort of high end, but it's very casual. We work with local farmers. We're considered one of the greenest restaurants in the country. We've sort of pioneered a lot of the wind power in restaurants, and we don't have any garbage. Everything goes back to the farmers in the form of compost.
Wow.
all of our tables are made from the wooden rafters in the building. I mean, like, we just wanted to create an example.
Right.
And what it became is a restaurant that, you know, really, I mean, the weeks we'll do 4,000 people a week in that restaurant. I mean, it's just incredible.
4,000 seats?
And it's not a big restaurant.
No, that's what I've heard. It's like a really hot ticket in Colorado.
And so it's this thing which became much bigger than I ever expected. And what was so fun about it, in retrospect, was I got back in the software business in 2006. And I got back in, and I come back and see my friends. Hey guys, I'm back in here. What should I? How's it going? And they all have this look on their face, like they've just gone through the nuclear wasteland of 2000 to 2005. Which was brutal.
Yeah,
brutal time to be a startup.
Yeah.
So I didn't really experience that.
Yeah,
you know. So it was quite interesting. Now I'm getting to get a feel for what it's like to run a software startup in, you know, possibly the worst recession in almost 100 years. So.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting challenge, you know.
Yeah, I mean, how do you deal with it with your team? I mean, people must be panicking to a certain extent, like looking at their friends losing jobs, unemployment 9.7%, unemployment in the Valley 15%. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary. Really talented programmers, developers are out of work.
Yeah.
I'm assuming in Colorado it's worse than the Valley, or is it similar?
It's similar, I think.
Similar.
I think it's probably similar. I mean, the thing about, I feel like I'm very fortunate in that none of my startups have not been able to get the support from the new investors or existing investors. So in other words, they're all going, which is great. In fact, some of them are just gangbusters. Tesla's off like a rocket ship.
Sure. But that came close.
That came close. I mean, talk about a challenging company to build. I mean, building a car company in any environment is a hard job.
Right.
Doing it in this environment is
extraordinary.
Oh, that's out of control.
Yeah. We're going to talk about startups. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship. I'm really excited about our guest today. Joe Essenfeld is a guy I met at a conference. I was at a conference, and he introduced himself, and I always do the same thing when I'm at a conference. Say, hey, what do you do? Right? There's a book about that where you ask other people what they're doing. Mm-hmm. What's that? How to influence people, how to make friends and influence people. Right. Carnegie. No, who is it? Anyway, there's a famous book, and in the book,
Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie, and he says, listen, show interest in other people. So, being the megalomaniac I am, like any good startup entrepreneur, I always am in the habit of when I meet somebody at a conference, and this is like one of the things you can do, is say, hey, what are you working on? If you are the most awkward person at a conference, Tyler's not awkward, Tyler's deft, but this is a very easy way to get something going. You say, hey, what are you working on? It's very open-ended. They can take it wherever they want. It's not like saying, what do you do? Where do you work? Those are bad ways to say, but just what are you working on? And so I asked this kid, Joe, what are you working on? And he gives me this idea. It's brilliant. And I just immediately said, that's brilliant. It's one of those ideas, Tyler, that you just say, it's brilliant. Yep. We're going to get into that story, but just a couple of months after I met him, he is on stage at TechCrunch 50, and as Gary Vaynerchuk would say, crushing it. I mean, he literally crushed it.
He crushed it in the rehearsal.
Crushed it in the rehearsal, crushed it on stage, and he's crushing it post-TC50. That's correct. Joe Essenfeld, founder of Local Bacon.
That's right.
So explain to the audience how we met.
Well, I actually saw that you were going to a Digiday Apps conference.
Right.
And you said that you only roll deep and you give 8 people a free ticket. So I wasn't going to spend $500 to see you, being a bootstrap startup. So I got one of the free tickets, luckily.
Great.
And then I went there, and the conference was okay.
But I didn't realize that that's how we got into that. Yeah. That's how we met. Okay. I know we met at the conference, but I didn't realize that it was because you were rolling deep. And so just for people's background, anytime I speak at a conference, Tyler says, if you want Jason to speak at a conference, you got to give him 10 tickets to a conference. They go, 10 tickets, oh my God. And then he's like, well, Jason charges a speaking fee. He's not giving you a speaking fee. He likes to give tickets to entrepreneurs or people who are on his mailing list. We did that.
Yeah, promotion.
For me, it's like I like to roll deep.
They might sell 4 additional tickets.
Well, if I'm speaking there, I mean, not to get a big head, but it does sell tickets.
Out of you promoting the fact that you have the free tickets, they're going to sell those
exactly,
tickets.
exactly. So you emailed the ticket line.
That's right.
And just so you know, when we did that promotion for Digiday Apps, we had 8 tickets. We had to have had at least 50 people apply for those tickets. So you had...
There's luck right there.
1 in 5 or 6 chance to get in. So anyway, you come to the event.
And you needed the support because they were going on you with that Mac brand.
Yeah.
So I go to the conference and then waited for the right time, when you were looking at your BlackBerry and weren't talking to anyone, and then pitched you in 30 seconds. You walked away and came back, and then you said what you said.
Right.
And we were actually just about to launch at, that day. It said, hold off for TechCrunch 50. So I called my developer, called my partner, and they said, yeah, we got to hold off. Well, let's go for it.
Yep.
So we literally spent the next 40 hours making our TechCrunch 50 app.
And this was July, I think, or something.
Yeah,
So July, we were in the thick of picking the companies.
End of July, yeah.
End of July. We're in the thick of picking the companies. Many of the companies at that point had been picked already, actually. And I heard the idea, and it's just one of those ideas that you go, yeah, that's going to work. It solves the two big pain points I have. So explain to everybody in your own words what the idea is.
The idea from local baking came from my experience hiring people. And there's so much noise on both sides. So when people apply to jobs, they're sending their application in, and it becomes one of 300. So as the employer goes through it, they're looking through 300 applications to find those 15 that work. So we figured the best way to clear out the noise was to actually charge the job seeker. And what that does is it creates a situation where they're going to apply to only jobs that they're very serious about. And in return for the 99 cents that it costs, which is pretty much the average cost on our site, we're guaranteeing them feedback. So they get to see exactly what the employer thought or the recruiter thought about their resume and when they looked at it. So, I get people saying, oh, I can apply for free. Why would I apply in local bacon? But if you're a serious candidate and you really want to get a job, is it not worth 99 cents to see when your application is viewed? Is it not worth 99 cents to get feedback? I mean, it totally is. It's worth more than that. So we operate on that premise, not charging employers to post to make sure we get the best content, and we're filtering it. So we don't let every job up there. We actually look at every single one, make sure it matches our profile. It's a full-time job, no multi-level marketing, no commission only, and we're hitting the sweet spot of $10 an hour to $60,000 a year. Those are the jobs that we're really looking to fill. And our demographics is about 18 to 24-year-olds, and they're loving the site. We haven't had a huge traffic spike, but the people that are using it, we're getting interviews for, and we're close to getting our first hire.
We have a thinker, a communicator, is a longtime friend of mine who I met, I think in 1994, 95, when I was 23, 24 years old. Happened to meet through some mutual friends. We made a connection. We've been friends ever since. And this is the person I talk to when I don't know how to deal with a person or a situation, or I'm confused about how I need to negotiate a situation. Not negotiate on a business level, but negotiate on a human level. So I'm really excited to have Mark Goulston here. Welcome to the program.
So does that mean when people catch you not listening, they get to complain to me?
Yeah, basically, if anybody has a problem with me not listening or behaving badly in general, which is probably 20% of the time, call Mark and he'll do an intervention with me. But one of the few people I would say, actually, I would consider a mentor. There's very few people actually I look to get advice, but I actually call you sometimes on your cell phone. We get a cup of coffee, and I say, "This is the situation I'm dealing with. What do you think? How would you deal with it?" So, is that what you do? What do you do exactly for a living? I know you're a psychiatrist, but you write all these books. How do you describe yourself as your profession?
Well, someone branded me a few days ago, and they said, "Mark, you are a CEO whisperer." How come you didn't bunker? Why didn't you hide? What was different? Because I think people viewing want to know, how do you have resilience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, wow, we got to think about that for a second. Now you got me. You just did that thing where you got me thinking about it. So now
I can just sit back.
Wow, yeah. Now I got to think about that for a second. Why don't you give up? Yeah, I mean, part of it is I think I've only ever worked. I've never had a moment in my life where I wasn't working. So the state of sort of goofing off, to me, is very anxiety producing. If I'm on a beach for it's the second day or the third day and we're not doing something, that's terrible. That's not vacation to me. That's torture. Like, we're going to literally sit on a beach and do nothing for the third, fourth day in a row. Can we at least go get jet skis or go shoot some guns or, go snowmobiling or do some activity or read a book or play chess or something? So I think that was the main reason. But also, and we've talked about this before, my dad had businesses when I was growing up, and I watched him lose a business, and he didn't get back up, He sort of gave up after he lost his business and just went to work for other people. And so once I had seen that, I was just like, God, I can't give up. I got to do it for my dad at least. I got to fight through it. And that's when I started the second business, Weblogs Inc., which, everybody said when I did Silicon Eye Reporter, I got lucky. And then when the blog company happened, and that started to work, everybody said the same thing in the beginning, that'll never work. Then they said it was an obvious idea. And then they said I got lucky again. So it's almost like you're always, with the detractors, fighting against this never-ending stream of people don't understand your idea at the beginning. Then when they start to understand, they say it's never going to work. Then when you finally prove it's going to work, they say you got lucky. What is, how do entrepreneurs, because a lot of them listen to the program, it's the majority of the audience, how do they deal with that? And what separates the people who can deal with it, who can't? Like, what are the techniques? Because I know, it's never ending. And now that you have this open internet with blog comments and Twitter, I mean, everybody's under constant attack and criticism from anonymous people. I mean, it's got to be grinding on people. Is it a different psychological dynamic that occurs today on the open internet than before the internet? Do you find people coming to you to talk about stuff saying, I can't deal with this pressure anymore? It's you know, living in public and all this pressure is different than maybe the old days when you were private.
As I talk to any CEO, founder, senior manager, anyone who's made a breakthrough in their life, when I ask them, was it preceded by a breakdown, people will invariably make the connection. In fact, one of my heroes is a fellow named Jim Mazzo. Jim Mazzo is the now senior vice president of Abbott Medical Optics. He was the chairman and CEO of Advanced Medical Optics, and they were recently acquired by Abbott. But a couple of years ago, when he was the chairman and CEO of Advanced Medical Optics in Orange County, he had a product that was damaging corneas. And as soon as he found out about it, and it was all over the Wall Street Journal, he took the product off. He didn't check with his board. He didn't check with anything. It was like the fellow who took Tylenol off the market many years before. And I called Jim, and I think this is what we all strive to be. I called him that day to tell him how much I admired him. You know, without checking what the hit was going to cost them, he did the right thing. And I actually write about it in the book, Just Listen, because I was just so admiring. And this was his response. The day after, you know, he was just scoured by the Wall Street Journal, he said, Mark, I'm giddy with excitement.
Giddy with excitement?
I'm giddy with excitement. I said, what? He said, yeah, I'm excited. I said, I think you better close the door there.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, Mark, we do the right thing here. We have a great business plan. We have a good code of conduct, good code of ethics. I mean, we do everything right here. And it's inevitable that you hit these roadblocks. And I know that this is going to make our company and me better in ways that I don't yet know. And so what I'm excited about is that always in my career, the great breakthroughs were preceded by this. And I'm excited because I don't know how it'll make me better. And it was interesting because one of the things I've discovered in writing a lot of my books, my earlier books were Get Out of Your Own Way and Get Out of Your Own Way at Work. Probably the best lesson I've ever heard in dealing with setbacks is that when I hit one, what I now say to myself, because I don't like the feeling, kicks me in the stomach, and I say to myself, don't do anything to make it worse for 48 hours. Because I'm tempted to do something, to get angry, to blame myself. But I keep saying to myself probably 25 times a day, don't do anything to make it worse. Because what happens is in 2 days, I will discover something that I never would have discovered had I not had the breakdown. And if I do that thing to make it worse, I won't discover that breakthrough because I'll be too busy having to deal with all the people I offended, ticked off, the going off the wagon in some eating or exercise. And so that will obscure the discovery. And it's interesting because I do a fair amount of strategic planning with companies, with founders who will whisper into my ear as the CEO whisperer, I think I need a new vision. I think I am an opportunist. And the good news is if you can be that humble and open to that, you don't have to be the visionary. You can bring in other people. There is a distinct process. And it's one of the ways to most embolden and re-enthuse your people if they get to participate in what the vision will be. And you can do that. The problem is that a lot of people who are seen as visionaries don't want to admit to anyone except a CEO whisper, I think I'm a one-trick pony.
We have a great guest today. John McFarlane is the CEO and founder of Sonos. Everybody knows Sonos. It is the multi-room music system that you started the company back in 2003, correct?
Yeah, probably January of 2003 would be a date you'd pick
right.
to start.
And to start a hardware-specific company, a startup, is the thing that they tell entrepreneurs not to do. Whatever you do not get in the hardware business. It's the worst possible thing to do. And so you decide, and getting into the music space, which is a complete disaster, from start to finish, with Apple owning a closed monopoly, followed by the music industry, especially at that time, not wanting to be involved in anything digital or very concerned about it, reluctant. So you decide, I'm going to pick the toughest space to work in, music, with the big incumbents who are not very into the digital thing. And I'm going to do the thing that every VC says, don't do hardware. Why did you start this company and do something so insane at the time?
Brain damage would be the best description.
Right. Too stupid to know better.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been there.
One time when your production line is stopped because you can't get one part, and you realize that that's good advice. Well, and there was a group of us. I was fortunate, I did a small part other than coaxing everybody to work together. I think everybody else did the work, but we saw a very good opportunity with the confluence of wireless. Music had, with the original Napster, had gone digital for, anybody 10 or more years out of high school or college. That's all they knew. I'd like to say in 2003 we saw the iPod for what it was going to be, but it was a mechanical iPod in those days.
Oh,
and
yeah,
only
that
on
great
the
click
Apple.
wheel.
Yeah, so we kind of dismissed it actually, and but there was a lot of activity around the portable music space, and that clearly was happening. There wasn't so clearly an analog in the home space, and so what we set out to do was fill your living space with music. And the twist for us was bring it in from anywhere on the planet, i.e. leverage the internet. And as you looked at entertainment for the home, there was music and there was video, and video looked a lot harder. It certainly caught everybody's eye, but it didn't. The content was even more difficult than music, and as you said, music in that time period was problematic.
I mean, the biggest company was the Rio,
yeah.
Right? We don't have a major guest in the studio. What we have is a very controversial issue that we're going to tackle head on. Some of you who are on Jason's list, the 17,000 of you who are on Jason's list, got 2 emails from me in the past 2 weeks. One of them was an editorial from me about the concept of startups paying angel investors to present. In other words, the lowly startup, the broke startup, the person with a dream, the 2 guys in a garage, the 2 ladies who quit school for their Harvard MBA and they want to start something big, they go to the rich guys, the fat cats, to get investment. And I found out on this very show 2 weeks ago that some of the TechCrunch 50 were being approached to present at Keiretsu Forum and Private Equity Forum and all these things, and being charged thousands and thousands of dollars for the privilege of doing so. And this made my blood boil, so I did what I always do. I fired off an email. And it got a response. Well over 1,000 of you responded in the first day. 3,000 people responded over the next week. And we launched an official investigation, as I said we would on the show. Was it 2 weeks ago, the show? 2 weeks ago. I said we would launch an investigation into this, and the Jason Nation did not disappoint. I was flooded with first-case testimonials from people who had presented at the Keiretsu Forum, and Mike Segal, or as somebody called him, Scam Segal, forum. And what they told me was very revealing. They told me there were no investors there. They told me that it was mostly service providers, maybe 1 or 2 investors in some cases. They told me they felt ripped off. One of them told me they're preparing to sue one of these angel forums. And of course, all of you had my back. Of 2,000 responses to the email list at last count, only 2 were negative. And those 2 people both had the same point, which is why not let the free market decide if people should pay? And I said, I am the free market. This is the free market. You are the free market. The Jason Nation, This Week in Startups, we are the free market. We are going to ring their bells. We are going to decimate anybody who charges a startup to pay. And when I say decimate, I mean complete and utter destruction. This is the show you've all been waiting for. There are like 400 people in the room, and our guest Gary Vee is about to tweet it, which means there'll be about 14,000 people in the room. We're going to crush it. We're going to destroy Ustream. What an episode this is going to be. With me today is Gary Vaynerchuk. Vaynerchuk. It's also known as just Gary V. V-E-E. So on Twitter, G-A-R-Y-V-E-E.
Worst branding move of all time.
Your parents having that name?
No, Vaynerchuk, that's probably the best thing that happened to me. I didn't realize it, but now I've realized it. No, the Gary V, I mean, that's the only time I ever did that in my life, and it ends up being Twitter.
Twitter.
Who comes up with brand names that have silent vowels in them? I mean, that's like a devastating move.
Right. Yeah, it should be Gary, the letter V.
That's right. Or Gary.
You screwed it up, and it's obviously impacting everything since your book, Crush It, is now, I was on the top 10 of Amazon for the first week. Then I started at 15. It's top 100 books. You must be selling tens of thousands of these things a day.
Even better than that, pretty epic news, and I'm pumped that the peeps that are watching here get to hear it first. Just found out it made the New York Times bestseller list. I mean, are you equally 100% all in on both? Like Jason, when he gets pocket aces, bullets, he's putting it all in. Are you equally feeling that on both projects?
I am, and I knew you were going to ask me that. I am passionate about both concepts.
So, dude, honestly...
And that's why I'm having such a hard time.
You know what? Honestly, you got to get off the bitch train and just pick one.
That's pretty much true. I was going to actually bring up the bitch train. No, let me...
You know what I mean, JT? Seriously, though. Just pick one. You're going to be okay. You love them both.
This is the kind of thing that gets people off the couch.
Yeah, I mean,
Why'd you write the book? Because now we're into the part where we're going to plug this book to all hell. I want to know, why'd you write the book?
I'm going to get really... interesting on you. I'm going to get deep because I actually been thinking about it. I'm like, why do I want to be this guy? I don't want, I'm a doer. I like building companies. 2010, it's funny you said retired. I was listening. I was like, 2010's exciting for me. I canceled like 40 things already.
Right.
I want to put my head down. I want to build VaynerMedia with my brother, something I'm doing. I want to build Quark, this little
Quark doing good.
Yeah, things are doing interesting. So I'm like, why am I being this everybody's like, he's a motivational speaker, he's a this. I'm like, no. But what I've realized is this. I feel an enormous sense of responsibility. My mom did a ridiculous job. And when I mean ridiculous, phenomenal to no end in building self-esteem in me. Jace, when I was 15, no joke, this is like embarrassing, but I legitimately thought I was the best looking, smartest guy on earth. Like for reals. Not like I was 6 years older. Right. 15, you're a sophomore in high school.
She told you this.
She told me it so much.
Right.
And I believed it so much that no matter what anybody else said, I just believed. Right. I mean, she brainwashed my ass. Right. But what I recognized as I've gotten older, it's the backbone. It's the blueprint of my success.
Confidence.
It's through the roof. Now, I also have lucky entrepreneurial DNA. I made money in my lemonade stand. I was making $1,000 a weekend in 8th grade selling baseball cards. I've gone there and I've been able to do things. It feels nice when you take your family liquor store business and in 2 years take it from 4 to 25.
Right.
So you know what you're doing, but still, the reason I took it from 4 to 25 is because when people came in and said, Gary, I met a lot of the bigwigs in the liquor industry in that first year when I went from 4 to 10. Everybody's like, who is that? Whoa, Sasha's kid, it's got some juice.
Right.
So I started meeting all these bigwigs, all these CEOs, Diageos, and everybody said the same thing to me. Kid, you're doing a great job, but make sure, retail's a 3-game play. Service, selection, and price. Make sure you pick 2 of them and do that well. Because what you're doing seems like you're doing 3, you're gonna get stretched in, you're not gonna make money. And here are these Fortune 500 CEOs, bigwig distributors that own $100 million companies. My dad would always tell me they're so much smarter, because we came from Russia. And I would walk out of lunch and say, he's a fucking idiot.
Right.
I'm gonna do all 3 because then the customer has no reason not to go right? And I grinded. Without my mom doing what she did, I would have listened.
Right. And our guest today, Mark Suster, I'm pronouncing it correctly, right? Suster?
Yeah, that's it.
Mark Suster's here. He's a CEO turned VC.
Yes.
Ran a couple of companies successfully.
Yep.
Then you went over to the dark side, became a VC, and you're quite the angel investor VC here in Los Angeles.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both, and yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I think people overestimate the value of their ideas.
Yeah.
They actually think their idea is what you're going to invest in. What do you look for when you're investing in a company?
Yeah, so what do I look for? I mean, really, I say 70% of my decision is the management team.
30% of my investment is the idea, right? Because you have to marry those two things. So really it's about the team, and a lot of it's about the proof. I mean, Pablo's a perfect example. If I picked up correctly, I think he works for Google, so hopefully he didn't give his last name out. And
yeah, how many Pablos in Switzerland work for Google? Yeah, Argentinian living in Switzerland.
I think he said he worked for Frugal, right? That was, yeah. So, so listen, I'm looking for certain attributes of a real entrepreneur, and a real entrepreneur is 1 in 1,000, or maybe, you know, the odds are even worse than that. It's that person who's driven, maniacal, has already quit their day job because they can't imagine doing anything else. They see this idea, they're afraid that someone else is going to steal the idea if they don't do it first. And I often get the people who come into my office and they say, well, here's 3 guys who are part-time and they're going to join me as soon as I get funded. And, you know, I try to be helpful, but sometimes I get a bit cheeky and I say to them, I say, well, you know, I got to be honest, you're not an entrepreneur. And the guy will look across the table, or the woman will look across the table, and they'll say, like, what are you talking about? I said, well, listen, if you were an entrepreneur, those 3 people would have already quit their jobs. Why?
Right.
Because you would have had that inspiration, that magic dust that they quit to join you.
Right.
And the fact that they haven't says that there's probably not something here. And to which they then say, oh, no, because I'm married and I just bought a house and I got a mortgage. So I looked them in the eye and said, well, you're probably not an entrepreneur because you should keep your day job to pay for your mortgage.
Right.
Entrepreneurs are maniacal and driven, and they have this idea. So I'm looking for that focus.
Level of risk-taking.
Yeah.
That
level of risk-taking, and they've already done something, they're not talking about it. I usually like second-time entrepreneurs, mostly because I effed up everything on my first company, and I just realized that first-time entrepreneurs make similar mistakes. The other thing I'm looking for is domain experience in what someone's doing.
Sure.
It's not absolutely required, but it certainly helps, right?
So, Matt, wow, it's really hard to even know where to begin. You're 25 years old. You started WordPress, I think, in 2004, 2003?
End of 2003. Yeah.
End of 2003. I met you long ago, and this little underdog kid who was building some open source software now has the 9th largest network in the world, or in the United States, according to Quantcast. How many people are coming to WordPress blogs today?
I think our monthly uniques is around 220 million right now on Quantcast. So we hire very, very slowly. Even today, we're just 50 people. Part of that is that I still do 100% of the hiring, and I'm very, very, very picky. We've done a million different ways, and we still, to this day, there's puzzles hidden throughout the source code and headers in different parts of WordPress.com and our other products. And there's things you'll find, they'll send you down a rabbit path. If you solve it, it gives you an email address to send to, just stuff like that. We try to self-select by job descriptions. We try to only talk to people who've applied like 4 times. we do a number of these things. And
that works for salespeople.
No, it works great for everyone.
You apply 4 times, and then you got to call 6 times to get the offer letter after the interview.
The best possible, the only one of those I would recommend universally or without reservation as working for normal people, not just us. Oh, and another thing is a lot of people contribute to WordPress. So out of that, we started doing things where if there's a new person, we'll often work with them on a contract basis before hiring them full time. And it's not like spec where we pay them. We pay the rate, everything like that. We just try to pick like a 2 to 3 week process that they can mostly own, something self-contained. They do. This works best for engineers. Doesn't work at all for like business people or marketing or something like that. But for engineers, you can say, write a WordPress plugin or something like that and pay them for it and have it something you want to do anyway and see how just working together is. Because there's no replacement for just working with someone. And because there might be great people who pass every single test and figure every puzzle we do and everything like that, but they just don't work well with our environment, which is 100% distributed, 100% virtual, or open source, or PHP, or whatever. And we need to figure out that mutual compatibility. So what I feel like is, I feel like offices create an artificial environment that reward presence over productivity or
So you're saying
output.
a central office, not, you don't mean private offices that you go
A central
to.
office.
A central office
And a
of the
private
company.
office is personally, this is just something, and perhaps this is your bias as well, I find that when I'm actually coding things, when I'm actually programming, there's large cost of context switch, interruptions, distractions, everything. Now if you take that to its logical conclusion, how nice can your offices be and when you have a central office? I mean, we have a cool space, it's 4,000, 5,000 square feet or whatever, but you know, my office at home has an amazing speaker system. I can listen to whatever music I want. It's, you know, I built it out myself. It's actually a bedroom, you know? To build that for 40 people, you would need like a whole building with like 10 people on each floor or something. Like it'd be like an apartment complex, not like a thing. So by allowing people to work from home, you kind of take that to a logical conclusion where people can design their own workspaces, which is different for different folks. Some people at Automatic like to go into coffee shops, and they work sort of with everyone else around them and things like that, or co-working spaces.
Be social, yeah, co-working spaces.
I think certain developers really thrive in that sort of environment.
Yeah.
I think they do. Some people cut everything off, and some people just where they live. Some people live in cities in like Vancouver, San Francisco, Montreal, and some folks live in like rural Alabama. And there is no other tech company in this little town that this guy lives in rural Alabama, but he's one of the best designers in the world. And, you know, for us to work with him, I think that what we do on the company is that in hiring, you would obviously, it's dumb to discriminate on the basis of something like gender. Because if you said, we're not going to hire any men, you just cut out 50% of the potential workforce.
Right.
And so by definition,
Also
by selection
illegal,
bias,
but, you know.
also illegal.
Splitting hairs.
But
not economically
but some
sound
things it's
either.
not illegal
Right,
too.
yeah.
I mean, it's not illegal to say I'm not going to hire. I know this. You can say I'm not going to hire vegetarians because for a while we made
not
a joke
a protected
of saying
class
that.
or
Wait,
heterosexuals.
you cannot not hire. You mean I have to hire vegetarians now?
No, you can have an anti-vegetarian policy.
Oh, good, because we do.
That's not a
Absolutely. Well, we have In-N-Out burgers. You know, it's LA. So. Today, an equally good show, maybe even better. With us today, Matt Coffin, one of my oldest friends from the internet industry, founded Lower My Bills, sold it to Experian for hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't even remember, was it $500 million or something crazy?
Not quite 500.
400?
Almost 400.
When it gets over a certain amount, entrepreneurs don't, they stop remembering the number.
I remember.
You remember? I have a feeling you do.
But so in 1999, that was my vision, was really this service that would allow you to get good deals now on your recurring monthly bills, and then we would monitor it ongoing. Off we went to do that, and this was again 1999, so on my 10-page PowerPoint, we were able to raise some money, and that was interesting. Another sort of startup lesson was that within probably about a month after I had the original idea, and I'd kind of done a little bit of a prototype, is that another company got funded called Pay My Bills. And so they were originally backed by Idea Lab, which was sort of the the
Bill Gross, Scary,
right,
Overture,
right?
Go to all kinds of stuff.
And so Bill Gross and I had been emailing, and he said, well, meet with those guys. We already did a deal. Maybe you guys should get together. And so I went and met with those guys, and one of my big takeaways, and I then saw this time and time again when we were really early in the evolution of Lower My Bills, was that two young companies getting together, very painful.
Yeah.
Very painful.
Not going to work.
Who's in charge? My idea, your idea, how's that all work together? And so thank God we decided not to do that.
Sure.
Fast forward a few years, unfortunately they didn't make it.
Right.
In terms of getting through that. And just related to that, that was really one of the things that I learned through some other mistakes was two small companies should not be working together, regardless of merging, but really working
Business
together.
development, building something.
It's so painful because you
partnerships in general. I mean,
tough.
It seemed like a waste of time for startups to me, unless you're some great deal maker like, you know.
One of the things that we did was that Lower My Bills just became really terrific at online marketing. We built an incredible amount of tracking, and we were probably one of the earliest companies that really understood the ROI of buying any impression, click on the internet, wherever it was. And we became very, very good at that. So we were able to pump literally, tens, and my last year I was there over $100 million in online marketing into advertising on the internet because we understood the value of that.
So like these, and you bought a lot of cheap advertising. We'd see the Lower My Bills ads that were all kind of funny, and you click on them and get your mortgage lowered. And you built this hit right at the same time that the real estate boom hit.
Right. Well, two things happened. But in about 2001, we sort of got through the .bomb, which was the most difficult. Just horrible. We were, one of those companies that was like right to the edge.
Yeah.
Of
looking over
going
the precipice.
Right. That was horrible. When I remember getting in front of the company, we had probably 25 folks at the company then, and we were in like we were doing everything that a lot of funded companies were not doing. We had the most horrible, grossest office that was so cheap. Over in North Hollywood, it was awful.
Dirty.
It was dirty. Heat worked on one side, air conditioning worked on the other, but not vice versa.
Right.
So we'd have rotations.
Oh, brutal. Bring your sweater or wear a t-shirt.
Yeah, it was awful, but it was also fun. It really got a culture of
scrappiness.
Of scrappiness. So anyway, so we sort of survived that, and one of the things that happened after the internet crashed is that there was so much inventory. Now, that same thing exists today, although there's more companies to monetize it. But the same issue was happening then, which is there's just this huge proliferation of impressions and folks on the internet that were not being bought by advertisers. So there was all this remnant inventory or inventory that was not quite remnant, but we could figure it out, and it was still being sold cheaply. And we really stepped up and would say, hey, we'll take it all, right?
Yeah.
We'll take a lot of that. And one of the things that we did then is we really understood the pop-under and the pop-up, right? And off we went, and we were testing that, and that was really terrific. And so we exploded as it related to the volume that we were buying in there, and it was great for the business, and off we went. And suddenly, Bill Gates says, we're building into the browser
no
pop-up blockers, right?
Game over.
And we thought, whoa, that is scary.
Yeah, that's the end of that.
Right, that's the end of that. So I'll never forget when that happened. I walked into the company, and the marketing team was just depressed, right? The day that we saw this, And I then turned to our finance guy, and I said, and this was like a metric. Lower Bills was so good at metrics, but this was the one metric I just was not tracking, at least that week. What percentage of our revenue is coming from this ad unit?
Yeah.
And it was 80%.
Hello.
And we thought, oh my God.
4 out of 5 people are not going to be working here in a month.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
So I went home that night, had a massive stomach ache and pains, and you're just you think, whoa,
cold sweats.
Wow, this is a problem. So I came in, and I remember meeting with the marketing team, and I said, hey, you guys are the marketing team. You're not the pop-up team.
Right.
Right. So with the head of marketing, the two of us created some metrics about, all right, let's get from 80 to 60 and 40 and so on in terms of our percentage over a period of time, because it wasn't happening instantly.
Right.
So we aggressively did that, and off we went. And then that led us down all sorts of other channels where we became very good at basically every single marketing channel on the web, and kept going. And then we hit this other wave. And I think these waves are also a real core to a lot of successes that you see in any business, let alone on the internet that we're seeing today, are you want to be a part of a rising tide wave that's going on. It is very difficult to swim upstream.
Yeah.
I know that I'm not good enough.
Or to surf it when it's low tide.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no wave to surf.
Right.
If there's big waves coming, they may be different. They may crash, but at least you've got a wave.
Right,
I mean, you can work with it.
Right. You have your opportunity.
Low tide, no fun.
Right.
Very excited to have my next guest here, Kamran Porzinjani. I think I got it right. Porzinjani.
Perfect. Cameron, though. It's Cameron Porzinjani. That's good. Thank you.
Kamran.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the co-founder of PriceGrabber, which is one of the largest startups here in Southern California, or was one of the largest startups here in Southern California, definitely one of the largest exits, bought by Experian, the same company that bought Matt Coffin's Lower My Bills company for, I think, what, $300-400 million?
Well, our exit was closer to about $500 million.
$500 million.
Yeah,
Wow.
I absolutely wanted to make that clear because Matt and I got a little competition.
A little competitive, right?
No,
right. His was $499.
Yes, but both equally very successful companies. Well, it was a $500 million enterprise value.
And this took how many years to get to that level? I mean, you were doing this for a while.
Right. So 1999 is when PriceGrabber was founded, and the company sold end of 2005.
So take me back to the start of the company. You were doing IT, and then you decided, I have to start my own company. This is 1997, 1998 timeframe, I guess.
Right.
You're getting out of that other company. You made a little bit of money, but not enough.
Right. So it's actually slightly different events. So I had just sold it was an information technology and systems company, as I mentioned, and I had just sold it to a company that eventually became part of GE Transportation. So at that time, my CTO had left a few months before to start his own internet company, and he called me, and this is a guy by the name of Corey Ostman, which, by the way, we've been working together for several companies. He's also involved with bestcovery.com. And he called me and said, hey, Cameron, what are you going to do next? So, well, I'm just running the company, I guess, for a while longer and see what comes up. And he says, well, you should really look at the internet, and there are a lot of opportunities here. And that was really the start of it. And so just, said yes, lots of money, lots of stuff. And of course, it turned out to be $19.99 toward the tail end of it, but it just was just an amazing thing. To make it really short, or give you a short story, it really very much reminded me of the Berlin Wall coming down. It's one of those events like, God, I wish I was there. It's one of those events that happened. And it's like, the internet is sort of like that. It's something amazing is about to happen.
Right.
And you have to be there. And
you have to get off the bench and do something.
Exactly, exactly.
And then it's here. I like what you said before, where there's still so much to be done, yet people are still watching and not doing anything.
Absolutely.
Some people. I mean, for as much activity as there is, you have to say, like, really, it took that long for somebody to make YouTube, or to make it work, or Twitter, or there's like all these things that just boom so quickly and work.
Absolutely. I mean, just look at the biggest companies right now in the internet, right? Facebook. I mean, you name it. Wikipedia. These are all companies that were created in the past 4 or 5 years. So it really just tells you how much opportunity there is.
Right.
And yes, things are going to get better. Now, you say, how long did it take for Facebook? I mean, if you think of the internet as a fairly young industry, look
15 years.
Yeah, look at how old is the luggage business?
Yeah.
I remember 15 years ago, there were no wheels on them, and people used to lug all those things around. So
that's true.
Just think about it. I mean, that's
there's always room for innovation, even in luggage.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's a good point. You cannot buy luggage without wheels today.
Exactly, and that's the way it should be, by the way.
Yeah, people used to actually carry their suitcases.
I know, I did. So
it's pretty crazy. And so you start this company. You raise venture capital for it, or you use your own capital?
No, it was actually, it was a number of us, and we were working for free, basically. So I quit my very high-paying job and went and started this with a few other people, and just got the site going and got the business going, and focused on trying to make money. But we did need some money, and so we raised about $1.5 million in 2 rounds. And then hit profitability.
Who were the VCs, or?
No, it's just friends and family primarily.
So you raised $1.5 million from friends and family.
Right.
And then sell the company for $500 million. That's the only funding?
That was the only funding, yeah.
Wow.
A lot of happy.
That has to be a record for
I don't know if it's
sort of like money in and money out. $1.5 million turns into a $500 million exit.
The ironic part is the second part of it, which was $500,000. We didn't even need that, but we were low enough on funds and just sort of cusp of profitability. So it was a cushion. But look, it's good. Those guys believed in it. They made mega bucks, as you can imagine.
What was the range of the valuation they invested in? Was it?
I mean, as low as.
Was it single-digit millions?
Yeah.
So these people for 1.5 had 30% of the company, or something to that effect.
Well, it didn't have 30. No, it wasn't that much.
Right.
But it was a good chunk.
10, 20%.
And the point is still, I think in one instance, I looked at it was like $16,000 or something like that was turned into 7-8 million or something.
Wow.
Or some big number like that. And of course, part of the fun was calling people after 6-7 years, and those were great conversations, some of them.
Yeah, tell me about one of those. I mean,
well, it was great because a lot of people put in small amount of money, and it's like, who cares? They figured all the .com and .bus, and they didn't even follow stuff. And so we'll call and say, hey, we're calling from.
Remember us?
Right? Yeah, remember us.
And you haven't spoken to them in 7 years or 5 years?
Exactly, and just like, hey, maybe we sent once in a while updates to hear what we're doing, and people knew us. We had we had a good name, so a lot of people knew that we were doing well. But, we would call people and say, hey, you invested, 15, 16K, what would make you happy? And I say, well, if I made 100,000, that would be a really good day, or 200,000. And I said, well, we're about to wire you about $6 million or whatever dollars, and it's just like dead silence on the other side. So.
Wow, the .com dream actually came true with your company. I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled, that we have Jim Lanzone with us. Jim is one of my old friends. You know him previously as the CEO of Ask.com. or maybe president. I'm not sure what the title was.
It was both. Over
Yeah,
periods of time.
CEO and president of Ask.com when they were probably 10% market share, 15% market share. You were the president, right? Even more?
No, it was never at that much.
Never at that much?
I think it was always small. But I mean, even 2001 when I started, I mean, it was already 20 times smaller than the big guys. So
right.
Yeah.
But of course, has moved on and was a entrepreneur in resident at who were you an entrepreneur?
Redpoint.
Redpoint, of course. Redpoint, great venture capital firm. Played basketball with the guys over there. Greg, you know Greg from down here.
Martin, yeah.
Greg Martin, good guy. And now has a new company which you guys saw at TechCrunch 50, named Clicker. So you got a good valuation.
Got a good valuation, and I knew to go after this. I mean, the thing about this category was you had to. We knew it was a structured data approach. It's a kind of wonky term, but like a Wikipedia, IMDb, TripAdvisor, Yelp, that would be the right approach for this category. Sure. You create a lot of it with Mahalo. We knew that we needed to do that, and it didn't exist yet. And so the process of going through and creating structured data where none existed was going to take a while. So, and I also knew from a search perspective and a related search suggestion technology perspective, I needed to bring in some of my heavy hitters who were going to, not work for free. So we raised a round that could get us to that
that'll get
product
you 18,
and some runway.
18, 24 months out, no problem. How big is the team? 20 people?
It's actually 30.
30 people?
Yeah.
Wow, so good sized team.
Yeah.
And you'll be due for raising another round in the next year or so. What's the climate like out there? I mean, you guys
we
have
don't
a
know
great
yet.
product.
I mean, for us, it's been the cool thing has been, I mean, the hardest thing. You know this. I had spent the last 7 years at Ask in a big public company, but before that, I mean, I started a company in '97 out of business school with a couple classmates and sold that to Ask in '01, and that's how I wound up there. But I hadn't been back to my entrepreneurial roots in a long time. But when you spend a year building a product with no feedback, it's like writing an album, and you don't know if people are going to like it.
You're
or
in a
not.
bubble.
So it's stressful.
You're drinking your own Kool-Aid.
Yeah, exactly.
You could had the same exact experience with Weblogs Inc. And that is part of the thrill, isn't it? As an entrepreneur, like you're in the studio, and then you drop the album, and then you wait for the reviews. And the reviews were great. I mean, you crushed it at TechCrunch 50.
It was good. So, and the thing about it was, so first that was a big relief, and I always thought it was good. I mean, I believed in the music we were making.
And you needed the product. So that's always a great place for entrepreneurs to start. Is if I need this, perhaps other people need it.
Right.
This is the first guest we've had that I've got actually butterflies about. Totally honestly, like I have all of these great CEOs on, but they're sort of like me. But a poker star is just like, for me, that's like Michael Jordan being on the program. But anyway, I'm going to do a nice professional read here. This is a first for This Week in Startups. We actually prepared and have a teleprompter. So here it goes. My guest today is sometimes referred to as the best female poker player in the world after studying English and psychology at Columbia University and the University of Pennsylvania and earning money on the side playing in local poker rooms. She left school on the encouragement of her brother and soon became one of the circuit's top players. She finished 13th in her very first World Series, took in $70,000 in her first month of professional play, and has taken home a bracelet at the 2004 World Series. That year, she also claimed the winner-take-all prize at the Tournament of Champions. In addition to her accomplishments in card playing, she is also a noted writer, philanthropist, instructor, blogger, and television personality, most recently as a contestant on Donald Trump's Celebrity Apprentice. Please join me in welcoming the Duchess of Poker, Miss Annie Duke.
Oh, no, don't ever use that.
No?
No.
Strike
Duchess
that.
of Poker, strike that.
Strike it.
That, I gotta tell you, that was given to me by, that nickname was given to me by somebody who came in and was decided he wanted to be the agent to like the poker people, and he said everybody had to have a nickname, and never asked my permission, and put that up there, and I was like, oh my God, that's so I like just Annie Duke. I don't need a nickname, thank you.
No nickname.
But I've been thinking a lot about privatization and socialization of results lately. So this is really a pervasive problem. So basically, if we think about it, we've got this axis, which is the skill luck axis, right? And this can apply to anything, not just poker, but I'll talk about it poker related. So you have the skill versus luck axis, which is, how much of what's happening to you is skill based, how much of it what's happening is luck based. So you can think of the luck side of this axis as the social side, right? That these are things that are in the world that are happening to you, and the skill side is the private side. So that's the privatization, socialization. Then you have the result, win-loss, right? And what you find from poker players, and this is such a huge problem, is that when they have good results, they privatize them. So they're using that piece of the sell. So we can think of this as win-loss,
Right.
This is skill and luck, so they're over here.
Right. So they're
Right.
attributing the good stuff to their internal ability.
Exactly. When they lose, they're down in this quadrant. So they're saying, oh, I got so unlucky, all of
Some
these bad
external
things happened
factor.
to me.
The
And
dealer,
they're losing
yeah.
these two cells.
Right.
Now, obviously, if we created a scatter plot of all the results you've ever had in poker,
right.
It would actually be scattered across,
sure.
pretty evenly across the whole thing. That sometimes when you lose, you played perfectly well, but you just had your aces cracked by 5. And sometimes when you lose, you actually did some really stupid things. So we're going to fill up both quadrants. Ditto for when you win. Sometimes you win because you have kings against aces.
And you spike it.
And you spike it. And okay, great,
sure.
wonderful.
I'll take it.
You know, and sometimes when you win, it's because you actually played well. And we assume that we can scatter across all. And if you don't actually properly look at those results in retrospect, then you can't actually improve your game.
And 2 of those quadrants you have no control over.
Right, exactly.
So you might as well look at the one that you do have control over.
Exactly.
Because you can change it.
Well, and this is one thing that I say that's kind of interesting is when people ask me how to control tilt, what I say is, well, controlling tilt has to do with understanding what results really are for and what they're there for. And when we look at the result of a hand, you should ask yourself one question first. Was the result in my control? That should be your first question.
Right. Put it in the different quadrants.
Yeah. If the answer is no, the result wasn't in my control, then why do you care?
Right.
And interestingly enough, those are the results that put people on tilt. And I said, well, why do you care?
Right.
Yeah, because if it wasn't in your control, then why are you upset about it? If you didn't do anything wrong and your decision-making process is really good, which is what is going to cause you to win in the long run, then why do you care if there was some result that was out of your control? If I have aces and you have 5s, and you know, I move in and you choose to call me with the 5s,
right.
and you hit it, why do I care?
Right.
I made a very good mathematical decision and a very money-making decision, so I can now move on. If it is in my control, then you don't tilt about it, because what you do is you say, okay, it was in my control, this bad result. Now let me figure out what it was that I did,
right.
and now let me change it. And once you get into that perspective, it actually stops you from tilting. And again, that works well whether you're at the poker table or not. So what I find in real life, whether it's in business or in people's management of their personal lives, is that they're very often getting very upset about things that they can't control.
Right.
You know, other people's behavior, people doing stupid things, whatever it might be.
Randomness.
Complete randomness, because we know that walking down the street is random. I mean, it's
sure.
a skill game with random elements, right? Taking a shower is a skill game with random elements.
Right.
Bad things can happen to you.
Sure.
So people really focus on the stuff they don't have control over, and they allow it to tilt them, which is really amazing, because we should be focused on the things we do have control over. And the problem is that when we allow the stuff that we don't have control over to get us emotionally upset, then we're very bad decision makers on the control stuff, and
right.
it starts to spiral out of control, right? And I always think that that's
also
really
known
interesting.
As tilt.
Also known as tilt, and obviously for poker players, it's such an important concept that we have a singular word for it, which is tilt, which you don't actually see in other things. You have to sort of express it conceptually. So when people ask me, like, I'm very well known as someone who basically never goes on tilt.
Right.
So people are always asking me about this. How come you're never upset? How come when you walk up to the table, it's hard to tell whether you're winning or losing, and you kind of play the same no matter what? And my answer is because I'm very aware of what I have control over and what I don't.
Right. But Jack Andrews is here. He's the CEO of WebSpy. WebSpy emailed us, I don't know, before the show launched, I think. Did you email like
straight after?
Straight after the first episode. I think it was either right before or right after. And said, this show is brilliant. This is what I've always wanted to watch. How can we help? Can we be a sponsor? And sure enough, Jack, you sponsored the show from the get-go. And I said, hey, you know, if you're ever in town, love to have a CEO of a big successful software company on. And you're here.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for running the show. It's been a great show. Very enjoyable.
Well, tell me, Jack, when did you start your company? Why did you start it?
Well, it goes back to when I was a commercial diver.
Commercial diver?
Yep.
You were a commercial diver?
Yes.
Isn't that the most dangerous job, they say, the divers on the oil rigs? In terms of fatalities? I believe it is.
It's relatively dangerous. I think I lost about one person that I knew every year out of the group that we worked with, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, so, and there were many times where, I mean, there was one time that I was pulled to the surface unconscious and thrown into a recompression chamber, and so it happens, and definitely people have been lost.
Wow.
Probably more often out of Asia, out of all the people that I knew.
In Asia?
Yeah.
Why Asia?
Diving in Asia. The regulations were certainly looser in Asia than what they were, say, in Australia, the UK. But so that's where it started. I effectively, when I left high school, I saved up funds to pay my own way to become a commercial diver, because it was a $20,000 expense, not something that you have lying around when you're just out of high school, unless you've got rich parents.
Which you didn't?
Which I didn't. No, working class parents. So then that was an investment in myself, and that was a great career. I enjoyed doing that for 6 years, but it wasn't enough for me mentally. I felt that I needed to do something different to that.
Yeah.
So it was quite successful. I ended up working inside an office of a small partnership of one of the largest suppliers of subsea services in Australia. And it was at that point in time that I was offered a partnership in that business. And it was a 3-person owner situation. And then they had this big breakup. And it was just at the time that I was going to pick up 10% of the company. And they said, look, Jack, we like you, all good, but we're not taking any new partners on board. We just had
Thing was imploding.
Yeah, it was like, you know, we just got rid of one.
No, wait, back to the deep sea diving.
Yeah.
How deep were you diving? What were you doing? Was this like welding underground, or exactly were you doing?
Welding, yes. Explosives.
Explosives.
Subsea cutting, pipeline connections, subsea completions. So oil and gas work.
How deep?
Most of the time it wasn't too deep. I think that because most of the oil fields around Australia are relatively shallow. So we're only talking about a few hundred feet.
Few hundred, though.
Yeah.
So it could be 200, 300, 400 feet.
Yes, some of the deep ones are certainly at 300, 400 feet. And I think the deepest dive that occurred in Australia is about 1,500 feet.
Wow.
And that was a mixed gas dive.
Yeah.
And that was a bounce dive, not by me.
A bounce dive means what? You just go to the bottom and come right back up?
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, and it was that type of diving is now no longer occurring. It's mainly done in saturation, which means that the guys go into a saturation chamber and they live in that for a period of time, and they transport to the bottom in a bell, and they're maintained at a working depth or close to the working depth, as opposed to in that particular case it was a guy diving down that deep.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
On my like 4th or 5th dive, the guy thought I was a natural. This is in Mexico, Blancar Reef. I was like, oh, you're a natural, don't worry about it. You're certified now. And yeah, I did good on my test. I read the book. It takes me on a 130-foot dive. Should somebody after 4 or 5 dives be going 130 feet in your estimation?
Well, that's how they used to do it in the old days. That doesn't happen now. Or it shouldn't happen now.
I was told that this is extremely dangerous, 130 feet, for somebody who's done 4 or 5 dives.
Yeah, certainly. And as far as you know, toxicity, you know, nitrogen toxicity is an issue for you, and you don't know how you're going to react to that.
Right.
You know, so you could go.
You can go loopy.
Crazy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Be like, hey, I'm just going to take my thing off.
Yeah.
So then after that, you go and start a business yourself?
Yeah, well, I think at that stage, I was offered a job, and I think this sort of stems back to some of the investors that were saying, you know, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you just need to go and do it.
Yeah.
As opposed to do it part-time.
There was an Ask Jason call just coming in, but they decided they didn't want to ask us.
So, yeah, so the job was offered for me without the partnership in the business. I didn't have any interest without having some ownership at that point in time. So I moved on. Effectively, the company that I was working for became one of my first clients. And at that point in time, I also self-trained myself in Novell Networks.
I used to be a Novell Network certified engineer.
There you go.
Oh, it's so funny.
So this is before NT came out.
Yeah,
so
long before. So everybody's using Novell Network to do their file sharing and everything.
Yeah, so I left and I kicked off a business that we installed networks, supplied hardware, and that grew from, well, I brought a friend into it. He was a teacher, brought him into it.
And so the previous company that wouldn't sell you, wouldn't let you buy in, became your first client.
Yeah, yeah, they maintained
I always tell people this. When they're always like, oh my God, I'm going to leave my company and they're going to hate me and then I'm going to start my businesses. No, leave your company that you're at now and make them your first client because they know you and you can solve their problem.
Exactly. You just
people
leave
do it all the
right
time.
Yeah.
We have a great guest on the program today. George Naspo is the CEO of Icano.
Correct.
Which is the parent company of DNA Mail.
That is correct.
Of Power VPS.
Power VPS is actually Verticore, and Power VPS is one of our products.
Power VPS is one of your products. And you guys emailed me before the show even started and said, we saw your tweet, or you were talking about doing a new show. Can we sponsor it? I was blown away. I'm like, how do you guys even watching my Twitter stream or whatever? But I said, sure, when we have a show, we'll figure it out. And you guys be sponsors, and you guys have been the longest, the most loyal sponsor of the show. And I, of course, appreciate that. But we go back. We know a lot of people together. You guys are backed by the venture firm Inside Venture Partners.
That is correct.
Which is the same venture capital group that invested in Twitter. How do they get from that phase one where they can't get a meeting to the phase that I would say you're definitely in and I'm half in, which is, yeah, money's available if you have the right idea. Money's not the issue. The issue is what's the opportunity and how are you going to execute and where are you going to get a team? Like, how do you get from that sort of early phase as an entrepreneur to the more established phase?
Having worked at a number of infrastructure companies and wireless data companies, and we've had some great ideas, we've had some bad ideas. We've had some companies go public, we've had some companies crash and burn.
Yep.
You're not really sure. But I can tell you this: when you have a team and you're all working together, you're working together.
Yeah.
And you're not afraid to get knocked down and pick yourself up, you'll have a much better opportunity really along the way. But it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's a challenge every day.
There is a sense I get from some folks who read about entrepreneurship, and sometimes they call into the show, and it's almost like this sense like, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, therefore, shouldn't I be? And should I just be? It's almost this, I would say, a sense of entitlement, but it's sort of like, they think because they showed up that all of a sudden they win. And that's not. You show up, and then you get your ass kicked, and then you work harder, which is why I'm trying to tell these guys to watch Gladiator, because that's what it's about. It never ends. It's a fight forever.
It really is.
And if you don't like to fight, don't be an entrepreneur.
No, it's
this guy from the Mac Support guy. He doesn't feel like he wants to fight, does he, Tyler? I mean, that's my biggest concern with him is you don't want to fight. It is a non-stop fight as an entrepreneur, and if you don't like to pick up a sword and get hit with swords and get banged on the head, why are you in the game?
Yeah, it is a battle, and I've been an athlete my whole life. Okay?
Oh, really?
I was very competitive, and if you're not competitive, you don't want to get in. You don't want to get involved in this. And you talk about entrepreneurism. I went back to my undergraduate school and I taught entrepreneurism classes, and I helped them set up incubator programs. And what we did, we gave them, we raised some money, we got some money, and as they came up with good programs, good ideas, we would give them some seed money to get started.
Right.
And that was really exciting. But the interesting thing is that most of them didn't have they talked about wanting to be an entrepreneur, but they didn't really understand what it really took to be an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah.
And when you sat down and you told them, I had questions like, what kind of car do you drive?
That's not really the point.
It's not the point here.
Yeah.
I mean, the point of the thing is that it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And if you're not interested in hard work, then go do something else.
Right.
But life is short.
Yeah.
And you find something you really want to do and what you really love doing, and then you'll be happy.
Right. This is your time to shine, Shango. Where to start? We've known each other for so long. You've been an entrepreneur for so long. Let's start, I think, at what was probably very seminal and a very interesting moment. Tell me about the early days of MySpace, meeting those guys, eUniverse. This was the down market, 2001, 2002, 2003.
Right.
How did you wind up at eUniverse, and how did you meet the MySpace guys?
Well, I was taking some time. Let's back up a little bit in that, got in the web in 1995 with Word.com, and went to a company called Rare Medium, which was about 11 people at the time, became a public company.
A web shop.
A web shop. We did, big brand stuff like, Hot Wheels. And
you built websites.
We built websites, but inaugural websites for big companies, which was,
their first websites.
Their first websites.
Which is an interesting moment in time, actually.
Yes, very interesting.
I mean, you had to go in and explain to Kellogg's or to Snapple or whatever, this is why you need a website.
Not dissimilar to what we did at Weblogs with blogs.
That's true, actually. This is why you need a blog.
This is why you need a blog. So did Rare Medium, and that was actually pretty successful. Made some money from that. Joined another company called What's Hot Now out here with trying to sort of disintermediate, re-engineer the licensing industry. Interesting. A lot of celebrities were involved with it. You know,
so What's Hot Now was your prototypical hype-based, a lot of money put into it, bigdreaming.com.
Yeah, I mean,
it was more of a .com than Rare Medium. Rare Medium was a service business.
Yeah, What's Hot Now had a good business, and they were a e-commerce service provider for NBC, the Olympics, you know, Comedy Central.
They set up their stores.
Yeah, and warehouse the stuff. It ended up being a good business. Global Sports, you know, or Global, whatever the name of it is, actually has a very successful business today doing that. But exchanges became very popular. There was a time you couldn't raise money unless you had an exchange.
Like VerticalNet.
Yeah, like VerticalNet.
And the idea there was what? Why was people so enamored?
They were
with
going
this
to disintermediate. You know, there's a lot of inefficiencies in business. They were going to like create all the efficiencies in the licensing industry, and you know, a lot of that is deals and side deals, and you can't disintermediate.
Lakers games.
Relationships, right?
Golf tournaments.
Exactly. A lot of that's relationships, and it's very difficult to do.
But that was a big mistake people made. They actually thought in the internet business, we were going to get rid of the salespeople. We're going to get rid of the idea of deals. We're going to put it all in an eBay format. That's more efficient. Therefore, that's what people want.
Right.
But that turned out to be wrong. Why was it wrong?
Because it's not the way business is necessarily done. I mean, there's elements of that make sense, but it's a combination of both. And relationships still play a big part in business.
I mean, you see it in the advertising space. You do have people buying ads on marketplaces, ad networks, but then you still have the big money deals going down between individuals.
The other thing is these people are doing, like, you know, they may have been correct. In 10 years, this is the way business is going to be done, but they only had enough runway for a year and a half. And as the market fell out, all these companies fell out at the same time. A lot of these ideas they're great ideas. You know, a lot of the business plans we saw in 1999 will come back as successful businesses, and you know, in this decade or the next, but they were just unripe.
So you go, you have great success at Rare Medium, goes public, you have to cash in a little bit there.
So
then you go to What's Hot Now, crashes and burns.
I left, you know, all these companies before they crashed and burned. Usually when they went B2B, I left, and because I'm really a consumer guy.
Yeah.
And then I met these guys who were really scrappy, who had a gaming network, and they were in like Connecticut and like rural Connecticut, and they were trying to turn this gaming network into an entertainment company, and they really had a lot of traffic. They started acquiring these sort of dancing hamster sites that had millions and millions.
I remember that. Yeah.
You know, and it had.
It was like the viral sites.
Yeah. So I repackaged that company, eUniverse. They were traded on the pink sheets. I sort of packaged it as contagious entertainment, because it was. Right. And the good thing about this, we could not get any brand marketers for those sites because it was schlocky content. But the people who were sharing that content were women 25 to 45.
So this is back in the day when viral meant instead of tweeting or Facebooking, emailing it to your friends.
Right.
So they would email the dancing hamster.
Right.
All of a sudden, this email, you have thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people coming to these pages.
We had an email list of 60 million people at one point.
But
women buy things online. You know, if you're going to do performance marketing, women 25 to 45 is the sweet spot. So
why is that? Because they're the ones who make the purchasing decisions?
They have money, they like to shop.
The husbands are busy working in some cases, they're making the household decisions? Is that the
It depends
idea?
certainly on the product. Weight loss, you know, vitamins.
Makeup,
even ink cartridge refilling, things
like
that.
Interesting, okay.
So the company became viral content on the front end, performance marketing on the back end, and we had no money. So we were going paycheck to paycheck. So when the market fell out, you know, we were used to building a business with no resources. So that's why we survived and really built eUniverse into a top 20 traffic site on the internet at the time.
Wow.
But it became Groundhog Day for me because we were doing these performance marketing deals, and whether you're selling vitamins, shoes, or whatever, it's just really a math problem over and over and over again, testing it, A/B testing it. So it became really boring, but the company was successful. I made some money and then left that company and actually started a publishing company, as you remember.
Yes.
Created the Guide to Laughing at Life.
You made your book series.
I made my book
something
series.
Something on your bucket list. You always wanted to write these books. You took a break. You wrote the books. They did very well. People loved them.
So my wife gave me, 24 months to make at least $200,000 a year as a publisher. Didn't quite hit that number. So Jason was kind enough to take me under his wing 3 or 4 months into Weblogs Inc. and then join you. And that was actually, it was great. One of the greatest things about Weblogs Inc. is we sold the company to AOL in, 18 months?
It was 18 months, and you were there for 12 of them, I think.
Right, and we had no office.
That was pretty funny, yeah, when you sell the company for a reported $25, $30 million, and there's no lease or office, and there's only 5 full-time people.
And I was working out of MySpace at the time.
Yeah.
So you were working out of your house.
And actually, the funny story is, actually, we went to Burning Man, I guess in 2004, 2005, maybe 2005, I don't know. And we drove there in an RV from LA, and I was talking here about the fact that I think these blogs could become something. And I think that there's marketers out there, you really need to come here and do this. I think we're going to make a lot of money. I mean, do you remember that conversation? Did you think I was BSing, or did you think I was...
No.
I mean, you obviously came in and started working on it with us, but
I can see the trend. It was more about giving up on my own, dream than it was about joining yours,
Which is a tough thing.
Right. As an entrepreneur.
As an entrepreneur, yeah, it is tough.
I was going to sell millions of books,
right,
but I sold tens of thousands.
Right.
So now, then I joined the blog. But we did those those conferences around blogs early on.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
So, we were involved in that trend, really at the beginning of the trend, and just jumped in. I mean, a lot of people did not make money in the blog space. The approach we took was very much like the advice we gave to that young entrepreneur. We looked at great keyword clusters, areas that, 1, we thought we could make money, 2, we were interested in actually getting involved with, and 3, we thought that were viral, that people would talk about and people would care about.
Right.
And so we built that. We built it quickly. I think it's probably one of the most successful acquisitions of AOL. I think
it is AOL's most. I mean, they'll be pretty clear that that is the most successful acquisition they've ever done, and it is in fact their go-to strategy for the IPO and being a public company. And they're actually very nice to credit us with it. That Tim Armstrong and Bill Wilson, they're a class act. I mean, sometimes AOL gets a bad name, but because of the historical stuff and because of the layoffs, but they've been very clear to say over and over again, Weblogs Inc. was a turning point for the company, going from an access business to a content company, and we're using those lessons in seed.com, and our goal was to be the largest publisher of niche content, which was our goal.
So we sold that. I didn't want to work for AOL.
Yeah, I did for a year.
And the MySpace guys had wanted me to join them while I was working with you, but I could deal with you that I would work with you for 24 months or until we sold the company.
Right.
And
which is always good when people can agree on, like what the mission is. I tell people here at Mahalo, I expect them to work for 3 or 4 years. Don't leave before then.
Right. Just as long as you.
I'll be really pissed off.
I think it's right. As long as you have an understanding and everybody's. So I joined those guys. So the pitch to MySpace for me was turning marketing into a profit center. That I was going to, they were burning $3 million a year on marketing. I was going to come in, push the budget up a little bit, but we were going to make money with it. So instead of sponsoring, Sundance, we would continue to do that. We pay $400,000, but we package it and resell it. And we made, we sold it for $1.5 million, where we paid $400,000 for it. We got, we recorded the filmmakers, we positioned the brand, we did everything we were trying to do in
which was a concept we had talked about for a long time, which is monetized marketing. How do we take the marketing efforts and monetize them? And then it becomes sort of Tom Sawyer-esque.
And so that, we built this company, this division that I built went from about 0 to about 40 million in revenue in the first 24 months. I mean, it helps to have 110 million users to sell. Yeah. But, the sales team needed programs to sell, so we created content programs.
And these are sexy programs. I mean, you're going to Sundance, and you're going to get all this traffic on MySpace. It's good.
It was a very sexy job.
Very sexy job. Very high profile.
Very sexy.
So then you decide, F this, big company, I got to go start my own company.
Well, there was never. It was a 24-month deal with MySpace as well.
Right.
Even with Crystal
Wolf.
Wolf.
good experience. But you wanted to do your own.
There was no way to make money there, really, any significant money. No way to get rich.
Right.
So
you can't be an entrepreneur at a big company because they're about their shareholders.
That said, News Corp is entrepreneurial big company as ever, you know, as it gets probably, but much more than AOL. The difference going to AOL at the time to News Corp was pretty crazy. News Corp was, you know, they really were letting us kind of do our own thing.
Yeah, for better or worse, depending. And sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't.
So then my wife, you know, had this idea for a company, and she tried to create some imitations on Evite. My wife's a well-known photographer, and she, you know, we used her imagery, and we just could not make Evite look good. And so she thought there was an amazing opportunity to lift the presentation layer and online invitations and greetings and reach a whole new audience, reach people who, you know, basically if you're doing a wedding or a bar mitzvah or an anniversary, there was no online option for you. You kind of still
For a beautiful invite.
For a beautiful, right.
And if you pull up my screen here, I just randomly clicked on the holiday section, and instead of the sort of donkey, Evite, ugly, you know, green and Web 1.0 horrible looking site, I mean, I'm going through here and looking at very high quality layouts and designs. I mean, this looks like something that would cost a lot of money as an invite, you know, from a professional stationery store or something. Right. I mean, these look like, and so you guys are investing in making these high-end graphics for these type of things, I take it?
Yep. So we've hired some of the top designers, one of the top designers, or the creative director from Bobby Brown, which is the most successful Estee Lauder brand. We hired a top creative manager from Target. My wife is really a great creative person. And then we're sort of building the top of the pyramid for a crowdsourcing opportunity for high-quality content on the web.
With this time, I go for mine. I get to shine. Now throw your hands